Life, Level 6, Student's Book. Paul Dummett with John Hughes and Helen Stevenson. Published by National Geographic Learning, a Cengage Learning Company. Copyright 2025. Speaker 1.
I think the most valuable lesson I've learned was when I was starting a business at the age of 25. I used to get very frustrated with my business partner, a guy called Giles. We'd set up our own web design business, and Giles would always take ages making a first design to show the customer. He was trying to get it perfect when actually it didn't need to be. When I told my dad about it, that it was driving me crazy, he said, "Look, you can't change other people. You can only change the way that you behave toward them." So from then on, I just tried to accept that Giles was a perfectionist and to see it as a positive thing. And since then, we've gotten along much better. And that's become a sort of guiding principle for me in life, not to try to change other people.
Speaker 2.
I think a good rule of thumb is never get too attached to things. But it's a lot easier said than done, and sometimes it takes a big event to make you realize how true this is. Our house was flooded a few years ago, and because my bedroom was on the first floor, I lost a lot of my most valued possessions. My laptop with all my photos on it, my favorite books, all my shoes were ruined, and some of my best clothes too. But in fact, what mattered at the time was knowing that everyone was safe, my parents and my little brother. We've actually moved to a new house now, and it's not nearly as nice as the old one, but it doesn't matter. You need to move on. Now, I always make a point of not getting too attached to places or things. It's just stuff.
Learning to deal with failure. Society is constantly telling us that failing is a key stage of learning on the road to success. But how easy is it to absorb that lesson? Research conducted recently at Northwestern University in the U.S. has shown that rather than learning from personal failure, frequently we find our confidence undermined by it. In Northwestern's experiment, participants were shown pairs of symbols and asked to guess which one represented an animal. After researchers had shown them the correct answers, participants were given the same test and told that they would receive $1.50 for each symbol they remembered. While most people remembered their correct answers, surprisingly, they failed to learn from the answers they had initially gotten wrong. Why, wondered the researchers, was failure impeding learning in these cases? To find out, they decided to conduct another experiment. They took a different group of participants and showed them someone else's answers to the guessing game. When they subsequently asked this group to do the same test themselves, participants seemed to have learned both from the correct and incorrect responses of the players they had observed. The conclusion, said Fischbach, one of the researchers, is that the hurt feelings we have when we fail or are wrong act as a barrier to learning. This barrier is absent when we are observing others' mistakes. How can we profit from this finding? One solution, say the researchers, is to try to look at our failures more objectively. Instead of saying, "Why did I make that mistake?" say to yourself, "Why did Paul make that mistake?" Eventually, that act of distancing yourself from personal blame will begin to protect you from feelings of disappointment and so aid your learning. A second solution is to get into the habit of working with others to help one another discover where you might have gone wrong. Such practices, when engaging with failure, whether your own or someone else's, can generally prevent you from getting downhearted or from burying your head in the sand.
1.
Life is what happens while you are busy making other plans.
2.
Value your friends. If you ignore them for a long time, they will start to ignore you.
3.
Always ask yourself this question. In 5 years, will the problems you're facing still be so important?
4.
No one has ever become poor by giving.
5.
You should never take yourself too seriously.
We tend to think of identity in one of two ways. Firstly, the social group, or groups, to which we belong. Our tribe, if you like. Just take a moment to think about what that is for you. We tend to think of identity in one of two ways. Firstly, the social group or groups to which we belong. Our tribe, if you like. Just take a moment to think about what that is for you. And secondly, there's our own personal identity. In other words, who am I really? And what's my purpose in life? It's the second one I'd like to look at today. How many times have you been asked the question, "So, what do you do?" when you first meet someone? It's a classic way people start a conversation so they can form an idea of someone's identity by trying to fit them into an easy-to-understand category. But while some people might like to define themselves by their job, because that's what they live for many people, their work is not their identity, and the question can make someone feel as if others are always judging them by their position in society, or worse, by how much they earn. There are, of course, other ways we identify people's personal identity. By their background. Carrie's been living in the UK for 4 years, but she was actually brought up on a farm in France. By their values. Juan's a family man. Or by their hobbies or interests. Tomas is an excellent photographer. Or sometimes by their character. Jack's a free spirit, or Irina's always the life of the party. We also define people by their beliefs. Amy's a campaigner for healthy eating. And yes, sometimes too, by their work. Lily's a medical researcher. She spent the last 10 years looking for cures for tropical diseases. What do these identifying characteristics have in common? Well, personal identity really seems to be about the experiences that shape us. Take Juan, our family man. When his children were born, he was working as a carpet salesperson. It was a secure job, not very well paid, but it kept him and his family comfortable. At one point, he'd been intending to leave the company and start up his own business, but when he thought about it, he decided it would be too much of a risk and would take up a lot of his time that he'd rather spend with his 2 boys. What about Jack? People call him a free spirit because he's 44 and hasn't settled down yet. He fell in love when he was 25, but the relationship ended and he hasn't had another one since. He travels a lot and lives in different places, picking up bits and pieces of work as and when he can. He keeps saying that in a few years he won't be moving about anymore, that he's had enough of that life, but actually he's been saying that since he was 35. Amy, our healthy eating campaigner, works for a big law firm. She's very driven. A few years ago, her roommate introduced her to a new vegetarian diet, and it made her feel great and gave her more energy. It also made her think about all the bad food she'd eaten in her life, particularly in school, and so she joined a campaign to provide healthier food for school children. It has attracted a lot of interest and is now becoming a national movement. So, while there are many ingredients that go into making us what we are, it seems that often what defines people, first and foremost, is experience.
1.
Peace and quiet. Make or break.
2.
Safe and sound. Aches and pains.
3.
By and large. Short and sweet.
4.
Far and wide. To and fro.
5.
Fun and games. Now and then.
6.
Live and learn.
Immortal words. The 16th century dramatist Ben Jonson generously called his rival, Shakespeare, a writer not of an age, but for all time. And so it has proved to be, because Shakespeare's plays are still the most translated and most performed of any playwrights in the world. But if you ask people the reason for Shakespeare's continued popularity, you get different answers. Some say he was a great storyteller. Others that the magic lies in the beauty of his poetry. Some say it is simply because he left us a huge volume of work, which was written during a vibrant time in English history, particularly in the theater. A more interesting answer is the one put forward by the critic Harold Bloom in his book Shakespeare, The Invention of the Human. Bloom argues that Shakespeare gave us something that the world had not seen in literature before: characters with complex personalities, and particularly weaknesses that we could relate to. These lifelike characters and the observations that Shakespeare made about the human condition are really what Jonson was referring to when he talked about Shakespeare's universal appeal. For Bloom, a lifelong fan of the poet and playwright, English speakers have Shakespeare to thank for much of their current language, cultural references, and their understanding of human psychology. While many might disagree with Bloom's assertion about the invention of personality in Shakespeare's works, various earlier storytellers like Homer and Luo Guanzhong could equally claim this. There is no doubt that Shakespeare's characters resonate with people very strongly. We sympathize with poor Hamlet because we all know that frustrating situation where our hearts tell us one thing must be true and our heads another. We laugh at the larger-than-life nurse in Romeo and Juliet because of the amusing way she offers advice to Juliet about relationships, putting practical considerations before romance. She is a person that we too have met. The name Lady Macbeth has become synonymous with cold ambition and manipulative behavior, while Othello's character in the play of the same name still serves as a warning to us about how jealousy can take hold of a person. Of course, the language plays a large part too. The observations about people and life are made more memorable by the way in which they are phrased, both succinctly and poetically. Shakespeare has been dead for 400 years, but certain words and sayings of his still exist in the English language today. Whether you are fashionable or faint-hearted, or think that the world is your oyster, you can thank Shakespeare for it, as he was probably the one who coined the terms. Similarly, it is common to use Shakespearean metaphors, such as wearing your heart on your sleeve, to describe people who express their feelings openly and without any hesitation. In fact, it is amazing just how great Shakespeare's influence on modern everyday language has been. He almost certainly came up with these commonly used phrases: a foregone conclusion, come full circle, has seen better days, break the ice, neither here nor there, and love is blind. Bloom's book title, The Invention of the Human, may seem overstated. The enduring humanity of Shakespeare, on the other hand, would not be an exaggeration.
1.
Hi. Is it your first day at college too?
Yes, it is.
How is it going? Is it as you expected?
It's been great so far. I was a bit nervous before, but the teachers have been really welcoming.
2.
Do you mind if I sit here?
No, go ahead.
Do you often come here to work?
Yeah, it's a pretty relaxed workspace. I prefer it to the office.
What do you do?
I work in IT, sorting out people's computer systems.
Oh, okay. How did you get into that?
By accident, actually. I got a temporary job with a company selling software, one of those no experience necessary advertisements, and then they trained me in computer networks.
3.
Hi, I don't think we've met. I'm Daniel.
Oh, hi, Daniel. Nice to meet you. I'm Hikari. I'm an old classmate of Katya's.
Oh, okay. What did you study together?
We were at a language school for 6 months learning English. There were people from all over the world. They were fun times, and we tried to keep in touch.
4. Hey, I love your jacket.
Oh, thank you. I bought it at the sale yesterday. It was only $20.
$20? That was a good deal. It looks great. Do you like bargain hunting?
Oh, no. I like clothes, but I really don't like shopping for them. I find it really stressful.
Me too. I always end up buying things that aren't right, and then I have to take them back. 5.
I'm supposed to have given up sweet things, but I can't stop eating these cakes.
I know. They're delicious, aren't they?
Yes, too tempting. It was my New Year's resolution to stop eating things like this, but I haven't kept it. To be honest, I don't think I've ever kept a New Year's resolution. Have you?
No. I gave up making them years ago.
6. Are you heading anywhere nice for vacation?
Yeah, I'm flying home. Back to Poland.
Oh, whereabouts in Poland are you from?
I live in Lublin, in the east of Poland.
Really? I don't know Lublin.
No, I don't think many people have heard of it.
And what's it like? Is it a good place to live?
It depends. The suburbs aren't very interesting, but the old town is nice. And because it's a college town, it can get pretty lively at night when the students are out.
1.
I don't think we've met.
2.
Is it your first day too?
3.
What do you do?
4.
What did you think of the show?
5.
What kind of movies do you like?
1.
Do you normally eat here?
2.
What's it like living in New York?
3.
What sort of apartment do you have?
4.
How do you like the new building?
5.
Do you want to get a coffee?
Studies all point to one thing about questions, that, on the whole, we don't ask enough of them. And the reason we don't ask enough of them is that most of us don't realize the benefits that asking questions can bring. Research tells us that, essentially, people have conversations for one of two reasons: for learning, through information exchange, and for liking, through communicating an impression. Asking questions achieves both these goals, as a study conducted in 2017 with 2 control groups in a speed dating setting showed. The group who was instructed to ask more questions, A, learned more about their conversation partner, and B, was more successful at persuading their partner to go on a second date. In other words, they were more liked by them. In fact, even asking one more question than the other group gave a positive result. So, asking a lot of questions can boost learning and improve interpersonal relationships. This is true in dating, with friends, work relationships, and in job interviews. And while the first rule of thumb should be simply to ask more questions, quantity is not the only factor. The quality of a conversation is also determined by the type of question, the tone of voice in which we ask, and the directness of the question. With regard to type, we need to keep questions open-ended. Too many yes-no questions, and it begins to feel like an interrogation. All types of question, introductory, subject-changing, are good, but follow-up questions, ones that ask for more information, are especially good because they show that we're listening and that we're interested in our conversation partner. As for tone, science recommends keeping it casual. More formality tends to shut people up, while being casual creates more openness. The same goes for directness. People often shy away from being direct because they fear invading the other person's privacy or even offending them. But asking direct questions, in fact, helps your conversation partner to be more honest about what they are feeling. I suspect everyone here has, at some time or other, asked themselves, "Why didn't I ask that sooner? I would have understood the situation so much better."
So that's a piece of wisdom, if I can call it that I gained while I was studying here. And now I'll pass you over to Luis Rodriguez, who's going to share some of his own tips with you.
Hi, folks. Yeah, my name's Luis Rodriguez. I graduated 3 years ago from this great college, and I guess the thing I most profited from, the thing I'm still profiting from in my working life, is building a network of people who I can call on for help and support, and friendship. It works on so many levels. When I first arrived, some of the older students helped me find my feet. I was feeling kind of overwhelmed with everything. They introduced me to various clubs and societies. There'll be a list of those in your welcome pack, and these activities will all expand your network. The Student Welfare Office, that's located in the Franklin Building, was amazing when I got sick in my second semester and got really behind with work. My college advisor helped me to get my first internship. All this happened because I reached out to people. I wasn't afraid to ask for help, and, my goodness, people weren't hesitant about giving it. And the last thing I'll say, because this is so important, is that one of the huge benefits of a place like this is the diversity of people you meet. It's rare that you get a chance to build a network of such diverse people. So, folks, don't be shy to approach. Don't be afraid to ask. Take advantage of this amazing human resource. Thank you.
Not everyone would give up the prospect of a lucrative career as a management consultant for the life of a circus performer, but David Pasha has never felt more fulfilled. Having trained as a market analyst with consulting firm Altman Valandry in San Francisco, Pasha has now found his true vocation as a trapeze artist and instructor. Pasha started learning trapeze in his free time while working on a consulting project in New York. Trapeze, for those not familiar with it, is the art of performing tricks while swinging back and forth on a narrow bar high up in the air. Pasha says his life at the time was a cycle of wake up, work, sleep, and he needed something more, something that exercised his body as well as his mind. He fell in love with trapeze flying almost immediately. Performing on the trapeze, he felt truly in the moment. He wished that the circus could become his livelihood, rather than other people's business problems. It didn't feel like a job, and what's more, the performing community felt like a family. So, after getting his skills up, he quit his job and took on the role of trapeze instructor in Dallas, Texas, earning a modest $15 an hour. His dream of becoming a fully professional circus performer is an ambition that will take hard work and patience to realize. But the circus nomad's way of life appeals a lot to him, and he hopes one day he can join a troupe such as the innovative Cirque du Soleil from Quebec.
The Ama Divers of Japan. In recent years, with the industrialization of fishing, the number of people who depend on the sea for their livelihood has declined. Yet, in pockets of the world, traditional ways of fishing and collecting seafood can still be found. A short train trip from the bustling modern city of Nagoya in Japan, on the tranquil Shima Peninsula, around 500 Ama divers continue a way of life that dates back thousands of years. The Ama, which in Japanese literally means women of the ocean, specialize in searching the cool coastal waters for sea creatures such as abalones, oysters, sea snails, lobsters, and also seaweed. Before the 20th century, not many people outside Japan had heard of the Ama, but with the growth of the pearl industry, their reputation grew. With only a wetsuit, mask, and a white cloth around their heads, believed to ward off sharks, most have given up wearing the full white cotton suit. They dive down to depths of 15 meters to gather their catch. As they resurface, around 2 minutes later, they let out a sharp whistle. This helps to regulate their breathing and avoid hyperventilating. Many Ama, like Sayuri Nakamura, now in her 60s, have been doing this all their lives. Sayuri's mother worked until she was 70. It's tough but healthy work. Traditionally, Ama women worked 6 days a week with 2 extra days off a month. These were called fish days and gave them a chance to socialize with fishermen who had also been working long days. And what of the future? Although Japan is a country where tradition is treasured, the number of Ama across the whole archipelago has fallen steadily to between 1,000 and 2,000 today. In the past, they earned good money, but now smaller catches make it more difficult to get by. By the time the children of today become old enough to work, this unique profession will possibly have disappeared entirely.
My grandfather was a forestry commissioner, which meant he was responsible for managing forests. I think he'd intended originally to be a biologist, but then he got a job looking after forests in Wales. He's retired now, but he's still fascinated by trees and plants. I guess his job was a way of life for him because it occupied all his time, and he spent so much of his life living in or around forests. Over the years, I've often thought about working outdoors too, but I don't think I'll follow in his footsteps.
Forest fires are, unfortunately, becoming increasingly frequent across the world. And, for most of us, our instinct is to run in the opposite direction. Jumping right into one is not an attractive option. But that's exactly what a professional smoke jumper does for a living, as one of them explained to this program earlier this week. For those of you that don't know, smoke jumpers are firefighters with parachutes who are dropped into inaccessible areas to tackle forest fires. Here's what Kerry said when she spoke to one of our reporters.
Women firefighters are well suited to this kind of work. We weigh, on average, around 70 to 80 kilos, so we're the right weight for it. If you're much heavier than that, you descend too fast and you can get injured when you hit the ground. If you're a lot lighter and there's a strong wind, you might be carried a long way from your intended landing point.
You mean like toward the center of the fire itself?
Yeah, that's been known to happen. But personal safety is not the first thing on your mind. In this kind of job, you can't wrap people in cotton wool.
No, I guess not. So, having landed near the fire, what do you do then? Because I imagine there's no fire engine or fire hydrant nearby, so you can't start putting out the fire in a conventional way.
No, that's right. We're like the first line of attack before other crews get there. We get dropped in with tools, chainsaws, axes, chemicals for fighting fires. We're given water pumps too, portable ones. But first the fire needs to be assessed to see how bad it is and how it's going to develop. This information has to be relayed back to base as quickly as possible. Of course, if it's a bad fire, we've got to look for a way to try and contain it. Usually that means finding a natural fire break.
What's that?
Something like a road or an area of rock, or perhaps some area of thinner vegetation that the fire has to cross before it continues on its path. When we've located one, then we do our best to make sure it's going to be effective by getting anything that could catch fire out of the way. Sometimes that means using controlled burning, so we actually start another fire to make the fire break wider.
I see. And can I ask, what's it like being a woman in what's traditionally a male profession?
That's not an issue. The job involves being trained to a certain standard, and you either make the grade or you don't. Those who come through it successfully have a natural respect for each other. I met a few guys during my training who had a different attitude, but since then, no. A smoke jumper's a smoke jumper, regardless of gender.
Free solo. As a small speck on a sheer rock face performs one precise move after another, several of the crew of mountaineers and filmmakers nervously watch from 1,500 meters below. Others, including director Jimmy Chin, are on the rock face too. They're roped up, capturing this amazing feat, and at the same time, praying this is their friend's lucky day. They say that standing by and watching a friend in danger is worse than being in danger yourself. As viewers of the movie Free Solo, we are one step further away. A group watching another group watching their friend put himself in the most extreme danger imaginable. And yet the concern, the tension we feel, even if we know the outcome of the story, is so great that at times we can hardly bear to watch. Free Solo documents the events before and during Alex Honnold's free solo attempt on El Capitan, a 2,300-meter-high wall of granite in Yosemite National Park. The title refers to the fact that Honnold is climbing without ropes or safety equipment, only his rock shoes and a chalk bag at his side. One false move, one slip, and it's over. It normally takes climbers with full equipment 4 to 6 days to reach the top of El Cap. Honnold plans to do it in around 4 hours. As viewers, we watch with a mixture of awe and incomprehension. Why would anyone do this? What lies behind the wish to put yourself in a place of such extreme vulnerability? And while we struggle with these questions, Honnold carries serenely on. He doesn't seem to do meaning particularly. Indeed, there is never a sense that he will get cold feet and pull out. The first part of the movie tracks his preparation. As planning for the mission develops in intensity, so does his relationship with his girlfriend, Sani. She understands his obsession to achieve his goal, but also wants a life with him, outside of climbing. This becomes one of the movie's central themes. Can someone this driven ever have a meaningful relationship, when that would involve shifting focus from the task at hand to the needs of someone else? The answer at first seems to be no. Honnold feels they want different things. For Sani, the point of life is like happiness, he tells us. To be with people that make you feel fulfilled and to have a good time. For me, it's all about performance. To make matters worse, while they are on an easy climb together, Sani accidentally lets go of a rope and Honnold falls and sprains his ankle, severely delaying his plan to climb El Cap. The movie then shifts attention to the why of this need to perform and achieve. We learn that he had a tough childhood. No one in the Honnold household hugged each other or said, "I love you." His parents separated, and as a young man, Honnold struggled with anxiety and the feeling that whatever he did wasn't good enough. His mother's favorite saying was "Presque ne compte pas," or almost doesn't count. And perhaps that is where the meaning lies for Honnold, the quest to push his skills to the limit. He's not the type of person that prepares to do well, Chin commented afterward. He prepares for perfection. 3 hours and 56 minutes after first stepping onto the rock, Honnold arrives at the summit to be greeted by his old friend Jimmy Chin. It's the culmination of a lifelong dream. He is ecstatic, but so much in the zone still that he doesn't show it as most people would. And watching the movie back now, he says he has the opposite experience from the audiences, Chin says. Everybody loves the love story and then are cringing during the climb. He loves the climbing footage and cringes during everything else.
1. Capable. 2. Conscientious. 3. Enthusiastic. 4. Flexible. 5. Reliable. 6. Resourceful. 7. Well-organized. 8. Willing to learn. 9. Good with numbers, people, words.
So, Georgia, can you tell me a bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. So, I'm originally from Italy, but I'm living in London now. I love it here, by the way. Currently, I'm working on an important essay. It's part of a teacher training course specializing in improving children's oracy, helping them speak more fluently and confidently. It's really fascinating. In the long term, my ambition is to be a drama teacher. But I'm thinking, in fact, many of the techniques that I'm learning now, I hope that I'll be able to use them teaching other subjects. That's definitely what I'm working toward right now. My course runs for 18 months more, and I have free time during the week. So that's why I'm here essentially. Because I would love, if possible, to be actively involved in supporting children in their education. A friend of mine at college told me about the organization. Since then, I've been reading more about it on the internet. It's very impressive, your work.
That's nice of you to say, Georgia, and very interesting to hear what you say about oracy. I agree. It's definitely an area that's been neglected. And do you have any previous teaching experience or experience working with younger children?
Absolutely, yes. I've been volunteering as a reading assistant for the last few months here at a local elementary school.
Oh, okay.
But unfortunately, it's only 1 hour per week. Before that, in Italy, I work at a scuola materna, a kindergarten. I was doing creative play with the children. I don't know what roles you have available, but I am very flexible and very willing to learn.
And what subjects do you teach, if you have the choice?
Probably I'm most comfortable with creative activities, doing, making, but also very happy working with language. I'm good with words, reading, writing, poetry, but maybe not so good with numbers. But I'm very happy to do basic number work if that's what it's needed. Honestly, I can turn my hand to most things. I love a challenge. What kind of skills do you have the most demand for?
Bionic body parts are not new, but they are a fast-developing area of technology. It's almost 10 years since we reported the story of 66-year-old Rianne Lewis. Rianne had become virtually blind before she received treatment, but surgeons miraculously restored her sight by inserting a tiny electronic chip into the back of her right eye. Using this, Rianne was gradually able to retrain her brain to see. Bionic parts don't only have to be used to compensate for a lost ability, however. They can also be used to enhance existing abilities. Engineers at the University of California in San Diego have recently pioneered a groundbreaking optical aid. It's a robotic contact lens that can be controlled by small eye movements. For example, if the user blinks twice, they can zoom in on objects. The developers think it could lead in the future to the possibility of an eye-controlled camera and also to fully functioning prosthetic eyes. The smart bionic lenses of the future will probably also be able to detect early signs of diseases such as cancer. Such innovations are transforming the world of artificial body parts. It raises the question of whether it is likely that one day, in the not-so-distant future, people will be buying bionic body parts just as they now have cosmetic surgery.
Drone Technology Outlook. In the coming years, we will almost certainly see a step change in drone technology as it integrates AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning capabilities. This will enable drones to perform much more complex tasks without the need for human intervention. In addition, drones of the future will have hybrid engines, allowing them to carry larger objects and to travel farther. The following areas are the ones that are most likely to benefit. Delivery services. Payload capacity, only around 1 kilogram currently, makes it unworkable for online retailers to offer a comprehensive service right now. But there is a good chance that within a few years, that capacity will increase significantly. Swarm technology. Multiple drones collaborating and communicating is something many of us may have seen in drone light displays, such as this one of 2 hands in Shanghai, China, celebrating an event opening. But believe it or not, this is fairly simple technology. In the future, AI, inspired by collective bird and insect behavior, could help swarms of drones to detect diseases in crops, plant seeds, or even track and control wildfires. Emergency services. Cost and efficiency should drive the use of drones in this area, giving the emergency services measurable gains in response times to various emergencies, tracking criminals on the run, delivering urgent medical aid, for example, carrying a defibrillator to a heart attack victim within minutes, and assessing the extent of a fire before firefighters arrive on the scene. Drone as a Service, DAS. As drones become more sophisticated and potentially less affordable, it is likely that we will see more businesses providing drone services to customers on a pay-per-use basis. They might be used for taking photos in a wide range of sectors, such as news and media and real estate, or for surveying in construction. Counter-drone solutions. The presence of more drones in the sky is bound to mean a greater need for protection against any illegal use. It may well be necessary to deploy other drones to monitor them, especially in sensitive locations.
Do you share people's fears that AI might get out of control and be used for the wrong purposes?
Well, there's a chance that will happen with any new technology, but I hope not. I think what's more likely to happen is that there will be stricter regulations about how it's used. Otherwise, I agree, things could get out of hand.
I wish I shared your optimism. Look at the internet. No one has regulated that properly yet.
No, but look at the benefits it's brought too. AI may well change our lives in very positive ways too.
Life must have been very different before the invention of certain things. But it's not always so easy to imagine what it was like. Life must have been very different before the invention of certain things. But it's not always so easy to imagine what it was like. We all take electric light for granted, for example. How did people used to manage with just candles? And if you're in your teens or 20s, you might never have considered how people searched for information before the internet existed. So how did inventions like these come about? Is it necessity that drives innovation? Or commercial profit? Or something else? I'm here with a business historian to discuss the issue. Martha, we have so many things in our lives that we needn't have acquired. I mean, we could clearly live without them. So the necessity argument is not the whole answer, is it?
Hello, Evan. No, of course it isn't. History's full of inventions that people thought they didn't need at the time. In 1878, a British parliamentary committee, which had to comment on the usefulness of Alexander Graham Bell's telephone, said, "It is good enough for our transatlantic friends, but unworthy of the attention of practical men."
Yes, well, they probably should have been more open-minded. But in 1878, people didn't need to have phones, did they? They managed without them. But now they've become a necessity. A need has been created, if you like.
Well, I think people in the 19th century felt they had to find a way to communicate at a distance more effectively. They just hadn't imagined the telephone. Of course, there are some inventions that fill an urgent need, vaccines against particular diseases, for instance. But most innovations aren't like that. Entrepreneurs often come up with ideas to make our lives a little more convenient or comfortable, and then, over time, we come to rely on them. Television is a case in point. Remote shopping, mail order or internet shopping, is another. Time magazine in the 1960s said mail order shopping wouldn't catch on because, and I quote, "Women like to get out of the house and to be able to change their minds."
I'm sure they did. Want to get out of the house, that is, and away from chores. It can't have been an easy life. That was a different era, wasn't it?
Another form of innovation is to take something that's at first expensive to produce and therefore exclusive to rich people and find a way to make it available to many. There are quite a few things that we now see as everyday necessities that have come to us in this way, where an entrepreneur has discovered a means of producing something more cheaply, like the cell phone or the computer. Another example, in the 1890s, the motor car was thought to be a luxury for the wealthy. Literary Digest predicted that it would never come into common use.
I see. So in that sense, it's about wants rather than needs. But what about all those things that we really don't need? I'm thinking of things like...
1.
It should have worked, but it didn't.
2.
I had to wait half an hour.
3.
He must have forgotten.
4.
You needn't have worried.
5.
She may have left already.
6.
I didn't need to be there.
Inclusive design? Innovation that should improve the lives of everyone. In 2015, a newly invented touchless electronic soap dispenser was installed in some public washrooms. It checked all the boxes for being hygienic and economical, but it turned out to work better when a fair-skinned hand was held under it than with a dark-skinned one. This was a classic example of exclusive innovation, a product that served some people well but not others. Inclusive innovation, on the other hand, means creating products and services that are accessible and available to all. Take your local movie theater, for example. How inclusive is it? Does it provide audio descriptions for blind or partially sighted people? Captioning for the hard of hearing? Ramps and wider spaces for wheelchair users or people with mobility issues? Are there special screenings for the elderly or mothers with babies? Or relaxed screenings for the neurodiverse community? And lastly, does the price structure encourage less well-off moviegoers? Rather than designing around the average customer, as companies have traditionally done, inclusive innovation gives consideration to the needs of every user from the outset. In doing this, it doesn't just improve the lives of people who are often at a disadvantage. It also makes good business sense. Around 1.3 billion people, 16% of the world's population, have some form of physical disability, and 15% are classed as neurodivergent, having dyslexia or autism, for example. Moreover, results have shown that when you innovate with minority groups in mind, your innovation is likely to improve the experience for all users. Voice recognition is a great example of this. Initially designed for people with impaired motor skills, AI virtual assistants such as Alexa and Siri are now used by everyone. AI certainly has the potential to drive this trend for more inclusive innovation, but certain issues need to be addressed first. For example, the datasets on which AI tools are trained may well be outdated and not very inclusive. The team developing the tool may not be very diverse. And the target user may not have full access to broadband. 37% of the world's population is still not connected to the internet. And even if they do, not everyone is digitally literate. Some businesses also worry that it will just add more cost to their offering for little apparent gain. Having said that, the benefits are many. AI can offer users a more personalized experience and one that adapts to their needs in real time. For example, an AI reading tool can adjust the way text is displayed and can highlight and correct words that have been incorrectly identified as the text is being read, thus giving invaluable support to dyslexic readers. A fairly recent innovation, BrightSign, is a glove that can be used by non-verbal people to convert their sign language into spoken words. AI can also offer cheaper and more convenient ways of accessing services, both for people with special needs and for the wider population. An example is a telemedicine app that allows users to have live consultations with nurses, doctors, or specialists, and where consultations can be translated into multiple languages in real time. Another is a personalized shopping assistant, again using a mobile app, that connects users to a virtual guide to help them get around a physical store and find, try out, and purchase various products. The latter is a great example of an AI tool that retailers were already exploring for their general customer base, but whose implementation has been accelerated by the promise of greater inclusivity. As business innovators embrace AI, there is a great opportunity to also embrace difference and correct existing inequalities.
First of all, say in a few words what your product or service does, without using jargon, so that anyone could understand it. Secondly, make clear what problem it solves and say why your solution is different from the competition. Lastly, you need to convince the other person that you are a good person to implement this idea, so explain your relevant background.
We've created an app that makes volunteering in the community easier. It's called Volunteer Planner. How does it work? Basically, it's an interactive planner that links people who want to volunteer to charities who are looking for help. Why is that necessary? Well, Essentially, the problem is that volunteer organizations always want people to commit to a regular time, like once a week. So they miss out on all the people who have time here and there and want to help, but can't commit to anything regular. So they never come forward. Of course, there are other apps that do meeting planning, like Doodle, but ours is unique to this sector because it lists each volunteer's qualifications and skills in a separate database that organizations can easily access. We're a team of IT experts with experience working with charities, so we understand this sector well. So, to get right to the point, what are we asking for? Well, we've made a prototype and now we need some funding to bring it to market. Honestly, we think it will revolutionize the field of volunteering.
Basically, essentially, clearly, obviously, of course, honestly, to be honest, financially, practically.
Wherever I go, I always make a point of looking up and taking in my surroundings, particularly the architecture. I'd recommend anyone to do that. It's very informative. By looking a little more closely, you learn a lot about people and how they organize their lives. In Hong Kong, you can't help looking up because almost all the buildings are at least 20 or 30 stories high. This photo was taken from the middle of an apartment complex, and two things strike you immediately. The first is the density of population here. It's incredible. Many people live in small apartments, one on top of another, because the cost of renting is so high. Those air conditioning units sticking out from the windows also tell a story, because for most of the year, Hong Kong is a really hot and humid place. Then, the other thing that strikes you about the buildings is that they're such a mixture. Old and new, fashionable and a bit shabby. I think you get that in any city, but here it somehow seems more noticeable because everything is so densely packed in. As a major financial center, it's still seen as a place of opportunity, as well as attracting a lot of tourists from China's mainland and from abroad. Many people come to make money. Bankers, real estate developers, and so on. It's busy, it's crowded, it's competitive, it's vibrant, and frankly, it makes a lot of other big cities seem pretty sleepy. It's not for everyone, but I find it completely addictive.
Cool cities, literally. Whether you live in a picturesque historic town or a sprawling concrete jungle, it's getting hotter out there. And like it or not, we need to get used to it. This year, Athens sweltered under temperatures of over 40 degrees Celsius for 7 days running, and in Hermosillo, Mexico, notorious for its scorching summers, thermometers registered a record 49.5 degrees Celsius. Unlike forests or water, buildings and roads absorb the sun's heat and then release it slowly back during the evening and night, making things even more uncomfortable for city dwellers. That's why a number of cities are intent on finding ways to keep residents cool. Painting. In Los Angeles, they are painting streets a lighter color to reflect the sun's rays straight back and avoid absorption of heat. In a similar move, New York has already colored 500,000 square meters of roofs white, reducing temperature highs in the city by up to 2 degrees. Greening. Arnhem in the Netherlands, a city already proud of its green credentials, has narrowed some of its less used roads and filled the saved space with greenery. Meanwhile, in Dallas, U.S., following a citywide survey, planners found there were disproportionately fewer trees in low-income neighborhoods. They are now committed to a tree planting program to redress the balance in those parts of the city. Shading. Others have revived ancient methods. The Al-Bahar glass skyscrapers in Abu Dhabi are covered with shades modeled on the screens traditionally used by Middle Eastern architects, who were skilled at keeping heat out. Conscious of the need to limit the tower's energy footprint, the architects installed sensors that cause the shades to unfold in sunlight. In doing so, they have reduced air conditioning use by 50%. Spraying. In Japan, people have been sprinkling water on streets and gardens to cool the air since the 17th century, a practice named uchimizu. Tokyo now also uses mist machines in busy public places, such as the city's central station. You might expect that people would be resistant to the idea of increasing air humidity, but the method is scientifically proven to work.
Are you feeling excited about moving to a new town?
To be honest with you, I'm a bit nervous about moving somewhere that I'm not familiar with, but I'm ready for a change.
It's a beautiful city, particularly if you're fond of old buildings.
I'm curious about old places with a history.
Are you happy with where you live now?
I guess so. The locals have been very welcoming to us, but I'm still very attached to the town I grew up in.
1,
That's kind of you.
2,
I'm shocked at that.
3,
I'm ready for a break.
4,
She's tired of waiting.
5,
It's different from home.
6,
They're safe from harm.
Hello and welcome to Property Times. This week we're looking at something very different, the tiny house movement and where it's at today. We're now nearly 20 years on from the construction of the Wenkehof Student Village in Amsterdam, a block of 1,000 shipping containers converted into single-unit living accommodations. It seemed entirely possible back then that shipping containers, incredibly cheap to fit out, very quick to install, and easily transportable, could be the solution for affordable micro-housing of the future. Jonas, has it turned out that way?
Wenkehof Village is still popular with students, and you see shipping containers put to other uses, as shopping units and cafes, for example. But as an affordable housing concept generally, they haven't fully taken off. They've been used to make temporary accommodation for the homeless in various parts of the world, Mumbai, Berlin, London, and many upscale or designer versions of them exist. But there are now a lot of other extremely clever designs of modular homes around.
Such as?
One I particularly like is the Wickel House, made in the Netherlands. It also comes as a floating house called the Wickel Boat. These are in Rotterdam. It uses highly sustainable materials. The exterior is compressed cardboard.
What happens if it gets wet?
Oh, it's treated cardboard so completely waterproof, and it's fitted out in wood inside. It comes in various sizes, but the basic one is 4.5 meters by 5 meters and comprises a main living space and then a bathroom at the back. The living space has a dining area, a kitchen area, and a fold-out bed. It's not just the bed that hides away. There's a lot of hidden storage space, which is absolutely essential in any compact home. The Wickel Boat, exactly the same design but sitting on a floating wooden deck, also has a hidden jacuzzi under the deck. Here, I'll show you a picture.
Wow, it looks really stunning. And it's interesting that it has some outside space.
Yeah, for me, that's incredibly important. To ask someone to live in a very small space without any other space outside that they can enjoy would be utterly bizarre. Compact homes have benefits. Affordable, easy to maintain, can be really cozy. But we can't ignore people's need for space sometimes.
No, that's entirely correct. I've read various stories about families who've downsized to tiny homes, And they mention great benefits, like you say, basically in making them realize they don't need so much stuff in their lives, and also in bringing them closer together as a family. But they all emphasize the importance of having outside space, especially when they have younger children.
Yes, and that's perfectly reasonable. I saw a great example of a micro farmhouse in Canada that had an outside dining area, a paddling pool, a playground. Obviously, that's all for summer, because it gets absolutely freezing there in winter. But the family seemed very pleased with the arrangement.
1.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
2.
That's extremely kind of you.
3.
Thanks. I'd be really grateful.
4.
I'm sorry. It's totally out of the question.
5.
Yes, I'm quite certain.
6.
That's utterly ridiculous.
The Paper Architect. For a long time, Iraqi-born Zaha Hadid was known as the Paper Architect. That was because very few of her bold and daring designs, though frequently praised for their imagination and originality, ever left the page to become real buildings. Between 1977, when she graduated, and 1998, just 4 of her 27 projects were actually realized. However, following the successful completion of 2 art galleries in Cincinnati and Denmark, and a commission for BMW in Leipzig in 2005, Hadid's buildings began to appear everywhere. Within 10 years, she had become one of the most sought-after architects in the world. So why did Hadid's architecture take so long to be accepted? Firstly, she was one of the few women in a profession dominated by men. During the time she was practicing, less than 15% of practicing architects in the UK were women. A lot more entered the profession, but over half left, either because of slow career progress or because they became disillusioned with the conservatism of most British architectural design. But in Hadid's case, this seems to have been a motivator. From an early stage, she was determined to challenge the establishment with her own new ideas. But it was never going to be an easy fight. Secondly, even during her student days, Hadid was interested in pushing boundaries and in creating buildings that were new and different. She felt that 21st century developments in materials science and computer modeling tools provided an opportunity to experiment with more complex, curved forms than architects had attempted in the past. She would initially sketch out her ideas in the form of an artist's drawing. But, as with anyone who tries to break new ground, it was not easy to convince people to follow, to believe that these sketches could be translated into functional structures. Most people thought the designs were utterly fantastical. Her addition to the Port Authority building in Antwerp Havenhouse looks like a spaceship or a glittering diamond stuck on the traditional building below. However, once people in the world of architecture began to see more realizations of her designs in buildings such as the Guangzhou Opera House in China and the Maxi Art Museum in Rome, they started not only to believe, but also to praise her name. The idea of the architect as an artist was something Hadid herself rejected. She did not want people to think that she had designed a building just so that they could stare and admire its beauty from the outside, as one would a painting or sculpture. Architecture, she said, is not a medium of personal expression for me. It facilitates everyday life. In other words, her aim was to create buildings that were not just innovative, but practical too. The internal space and how people interacted with it took priority for her. For this reason, she was particularly attracted to public projects, the Heydar Aliyev Center, a cultural center in Baku, Azerbaijan, the Aquatic Center for the 2012 London Olympics, and the Evelyn Grace Academy, a large secondary school, also in London, are just a few examples. For the last, Hadid designed a building with lots of natural light and dramatic angles so that students could view the activity of other students from different perspectives within the structure. Right in the middle of the site, between buildings, she placed a 100-meter running track to celebrate the school's emphasis on sports. The idea of offering the viewer multiple viewpoints inside a building is a common theme in Hadid's work. Internal spaces interconnect cleverly so that the visitor is surprised and charmed at every turn. Zaha Hadid died of a heart attack in 2016, aged 65, leaving behind a groundbreaking body of work. She remained all her life something of an outsider, or, if not completely outside, then on the edges of the architectural establishment. Yet her impact on architecture was enormous. It will never be quite the same again.
Have you seen the proposal for the revamp of the city center?
No. What are they thinking of doing?
Well, basically, they're planning to close off the streets around the main square to all car and bus traffic, pedestrianize the area, and then they're going to redesign the square to make it more people-friendly.
What does that mean?
There's a sketch of what it will look like on the mayor's website. I have to say, it looks really nice, in theory. There are lots of green areas with benches. There's an unusual series of fountains in the middle that make a really shallow pool that kids can play in. Then there are places around two sides of the square for food stalls. Hang on, I'll get a picture up on my phone.
Oh, yeah. I think the stalls are a good idea. You need a reason to go there. Otherwise, it could just become dead space.
No, I don't think that's necessarily true. For me, it's more whether people find it an attractive space. Then they'll go anyway and do their thing, whatever that is. Ultimately, it's the people that make a place interesting. In Mexico, there are lots of local plazas that aren't particularly remarkable in themselves. But when they're filled with people playing music or dancing or having a big family picnic, they're totally transformed.
I'm not entirely convinced it'll work without other attractions. I do think that blocking off the area around the square to traffic is risky. It could backfire completely and deter people from coming into town. That's happened in other places.
Really? No, I don't agree. I'm in favor of there being no cars. It might affect some businesses on neighboring streets in the short term, but I don't imagine that'll last.
1.
Close the streets to all traffic.
2.
For me, it's about whether...
3.
If you ask me...
4.
The area at the sides...
5.
They should make a law about it.
6.
You can lie on the grass.
3 people visit the same place and each one leaves with a different story. 1 remembers a romantic lunch in an upmarket cafe, followed by a long, picturesque walk along the water's edge. Another remembers an argument with an officious museum attendant about the closing time of the museum. Another remembers escaping a touristy square and finding a charming little park to sit and watch the world go by on a hot, lazy afternoon. Our travel experiences are influenced by so many different factors. The circumstances and state of mind in which we arrive, the weather, the people we happen to meet, an approachable fellow traveller or a wary local, and the preconceptions that we bring to each place we visit. We may all see the same things, a place's grand architecture or its vibrant street markets, but we experience it differently. Travel writers can try to capture a place's essence, the way a place feels and thinks, but ultimately, their view is as subjective as our own.
7 savvy travel tips. 1. Limit yourself to a small suitcase or backpack, then get some packing cubes, fabric bags in different sizes, so you can organize your luggage into toiletries, electrical chargers and adapters, dirty laundry, etc. It'll save you a lot of time, and the embarrassment of pulling out a dirty sock instead of a laptop cable at airport security. 2. I like the saying, put the clothes and the money you mean to take on the bed, then halve the number of clothes and double the amount of money. My own version of it would be, take as few clothes as possible, but include a Turkish towel and an extra bank card. 3. The thing I've found invaluable is photographing key documents before I travel, passport, driver's license, etc. Then I email them to myself, because there's always a chance I'll lose my phone too. 4. Take a journal or notebook. I'm not saying you have to write a daily journal, but it does mean you can record unexpected experiences or encounters. What's undoubtedly true is this. The best moments come when we happen on things by chance, like coming across this wannabe monkey model. 5. I'm a big fan of tourist information centers. They're underrated. Don't worry that they're full of tourists. You are one. And one thing they'll always direct you to is free walking tours, which can be a revelation. 6. If it's the real feel of a place that you're looking for, there's no substitute for getting advice from locals, like a hotel staff member or a local guide. There are also organizations like With Locals that connect you to some amazing experiences, like cooking classes in Porto or seeing the real Hanoi. 7. Don't stress about checking off the things on your itinerary one by one. Just enjoy the interactions you have along your travels. That way, you'll never question whether you really did have a good time or not. Laughter and a legacy of friendships are the best souvenirs you can bring back from any trip.
1.
I do regret not stopping there.
2.
She does travel a lot.
3.
We did miss home sometimes.
4.
They do spend a lot of time at the beach.
In the 1960s Beatles movie Magical Mystery Tour, the band heads off westward out of London in an old bus in search of adventure. That idea, of taking a trip to an unknown destination, inspired bus tour operators who offered exciting locations and top hotels. Traditionally, this offer has been taken up by parties of older vacationers. More recently, a London-based company called Secret Adventures has targeted a younger, urban clientele by adding a twist to the concept of the mystery tour. They've developed a number of more local and affordable travel experiences, in their words, to generate a sense of exploration and wonder. Though recently they've started to offer some longer distance trips, most of their travel experiences take place in and around London. I was really intrigued to try one out, but before I did, I thought I'd speak to a Secret Adventures customer to get their views on it. I began by asking her whether it really was a magical experience.
Absolutely. Definitely one I'd recommend.
And how much did you know about the adventure before you left? Because their website gives you the headlines of the trip. Woodland feast, night kayak across London. Like, how secret was it?
Well, we knew it was a cycle and swim, and that we'd meet in London. So we were told to bring a bike, a swimwear, and a dry bag. Oh, and also we knew the trip was over 2 days.
And did you know how far you'd have to swim?
Yeah, I did ask that. 50 meters. I thought about asking where we'd be swimming, but then I decided not to.
No, I guess that would have spoiled the surprise. And can you explain what the trip consisted of?
Okay, so we all met up in Hackney in North London, 8 of us and our guide, Maddock. And then we set off down the track next to the River Lee. It was a beautiful afternoon, and the path was flat, so it was easy cycling. and that gave us the chance to chat and get to know each other. Occasionally, Maddock would give us a clue about the trip, like, only 15 miles to go, or, is that our island? No, I don't think so.
Did you start to guess where you were going?
No, I had no idea. He did it well. All of his false clues just added to the anticipation. Then, as the sun was setting, he told us to stop and put our bikes in the long grass and get ready to swim. We packed our stuff into dry bags and then got into the water. It was cold. A few people were screaming. I know I was. But actually it felt really exhilarating and quite exciting to be heading off for the night with just your swimming things and a dry bag. Maddock had gone ahead, and by the time we got to the island, he'd lit a fire. He cooked an amazing stew for supper, and we shared stories around the fire.
Did you have tents?
No, we didn't.
Oh, I don't think I would have liked that.
I thought the same, but we slept in the open, and it was fine. It wasn't cold. In the morning, we swam back and all cycled to a cafe for breakfast. Then we got a train back into London. Arriving back in the city was weird. It made the whole thing seem as if it had been a dream. Actually, it kind of had.
It sounds pretty amazing. I want to go on one now. Are the trips expensive?
Not at all. Well, it depends which one. The day or evening ones are around £80 or £90. Ours was a bit more. But frankly, people spend a lot more and travel a lot farther in search of that kind of magic. But with these guys, you don't need to. They create a sense of mystery and adventure just a few miles from home.
1.
The prices at the market can vary a lot.
Yes, I know that.
2.
Would you like to drive?
No, I'd rather you did.
3.
Did he take warm clothes with him?
I hope so.
4.
Do you mind travelling alone?
No, I actually prefer it.
5.
Are there many good recipes in here?
Yes, there are some excellent ones.
6.
Did she enjoy visiting Russia?
Yes, she loved it.
Vacations. The story from the other side. Travel broadens the mind, so the saying goes. It offers the traveler an opportunity to view, more empathetically, ways of life different from their own. In the case of business travel, there is evidence that this is the case. A 2018 poll found that 87% of 1,300 business people thought that trips abroad helped to increase their awareness of and be more empathetic toward others. But when we look at the luxury vacation sector, the picture is a little less clear, as these two accounts from people working in the industry show. Their names and the organizations they are with have been kept anonymous. J.M. Entertainment Coordinator, the Caribbean Coast.
Even though in my job I had lots of interactions with guests, I can't say it felt very real. They were in a kind of bubble in their all-inclusive hotel, and I was there to entertain them. So, whether I was at the end of a 14-hour shift or an 8-day week, I had to be that smiling, happy guy. From the outset, I was told I must always respond to "How are you?" with an upbeat "excellent," not "I'm fine" or even "I'm great." Guests had paid far too much to have their vacation spoiled by a grumpy member of staff. And if they looked bored or grumpy, that was my cue to jump into action and pep them up, chatting, making them laugh, getting them to join in with a game, or sometimes by coaxing them onto the dance floor. The salary was nothing to write home about, even though I was among the better paid. Most of the staff, those preparing food and staffing reception, were on very basic wages, and many had families to support. A big upside for me was the bond and friendships I formed with these coworkers, learning about their backgrounds and their future dreams. I can't speak for the connections my coworkers made with other guests. If it's anything like my experience, I'm suspecting not a lot. But I did like it when guests told me they appreciated my efforts. A couple even said I'd made their vacation.
DG, International Hotelier.
You hear a lot of extreme stories about the excesses and sense of entitlement of the very rich. Asking room service to bring M&Ms and to make sure they are separated into different colors, or insisting on a brand of soda water the hotel doesn't stock. I heard about a woman at a top Swiss hotel who demanded a piece of lawn be placed in her suite so her dog could pee there without her having to take it outside. Obviously, your job is to make people feel looked after and try to fulfill these requests. And it's not what people ask for that's necessarily difficult. It's the way they ask. The when I say jump, you say how high attitude. But luckily, such people are a minority. Most very wealthy clients are respectful and easygoing. Some even prefer to have a standard room and no fuss. Personally, I think it's a mistake to keep pandering to the whims of the spoiled. Some people will never be satisfied however hard you try. A better strategy is to reward the behavior of the laid-back guests and hope the demanding ones notice that.
The movie Triangle of Sadness and the HBO series White Lotus comically highlight the lack of empathy shown by rich tourists toward those working in hospitality. They depict a world where travelers feel they can behave as they wish toward their hosts and the environment for that matter, as long as they pay for it. Exaggerated? Maybe. But what is striking about the accounts of the two people working in the industry is that their own capacity for empathy is, and needs to be, great.
I think most people nowadays know that exposure to strong sun isn't good for you, especially if you have very fair skin. Inevitably, some people take more risks than others, but on the whole, I think most people are pretty careful. However, it wasn't always that way. So, I have my clinic in Patong, on the island of Phuket in Thailand, which you've probably heard of. It's famous for its beaches, and consequently, we get a lot of tourists and sun-seekers here. A few years ago, I was in my clinic when a young man with red hair and very fair skin came in. Well, he was supposed to have fair skin, but his legs had turned the color of his hair, bright red like a lobster, and he was in great pain. Naturally, I asked him how it had happened, and he said he'd been playing volleyball on the beach and not noticed how sunburned he'd got. That seemed reasonable enough. I applied some cream to his legs, and then I wrapped them both in bandages from the ankle to the thigh. It really was that bad. On top of that, I gave him strict instructions to stay out of the sun and take it easy for a few days until the redness and soreness had gone down. Can you guess what's coming? Maybe not yet. Okay. The following morning, I was walking to work as usual, down the street by the beach. Guess what? By chance, I happened to glance down at the people on the beach who were arranging their sunbeds and parasols for a day of relaxing by the sea. To my amazement, there was the same man. Incredibly, he was lying stretched out on his back, not in the shade, but in full sun with just his swimsuit and with his bandages still on. My initial reaction was just to give up and walk on. But I didn't. In the end, I whistled to him, and when he looked up, I wagged my finger. He looked pretty guilty, I have to say.
1. To my embarrassment. 2. To my relief. 3. To my surprise. 4. To my horror. 5. To my dismay. 6. To my delight. 7. To my frustration. 8. To my amazement.
Everyone knows they need to stay fit to be healthy, but exercising regularly, that comes more naturally to some than others. It's fine if you're into a particular sport or like going to the gym to work out. You're enjoying a hobby and keeping in shape at the same time. But for many people, exercise is an effort, something they find it difficult to make time for. Maybe they do a little exercise on the weekend, taking a walk or riding a bicycle, but that's about it. Some might even take up a new sport for a few months, but then drop it. The good news, says exercise scientist Professor Stamatakis of the University of Sydney, is that it's relatively simple to address this by building short bursts of intense physical activity into our normal daily routine. Small amounts of intense activity, 3 one-minute bursts a day, he recommends, are just as good as keeping active over much longer periods of more gentle exercise. As well as building stamina, this can reduce risk of heart disease by over 40%. The kind of activity he suggests is running up the stairs at work rather than walking, carrying heavy shopping home on foot rather than taking the bus, putting in more vigorous effort when cleaning the windows or washing the floor at home. That's not to say you should rule out other ways of being less sedentary, stretching your legs by using a standing desk, for example. But it's actually intense activity that brings the greatest health benefits, especially if you are watching your weight, because it speeds up the metabolism. However, a word of caution if you were thinking of it as an alternative to going on a diet. Intense activity does also increase your appetite.
Mixed up sports. What do mixed martial arts, MMA, pickleball, and chess boxing all have in common? Don't worry if you haven't heard of all these. I only came across pickleball myself a couple of months ago. The answer is A. They're all sports that have taken off in recent years, and B. They're all hybrids, i.e., created by putting together 2 or more other sports. MMA, a face-off between 2 fighters in a cage, is a mixture of boxing, wrestling, and other martial arts. The gentler sport of pickleball, played between 4 players on a mini tennis court with bats called paddles, combines elements of tennis, badminton, and squash. And chess boxing is pretty much what it says it is. Within a traditional boxing ring, 2 opponents play alternate rounds of chess and boxing until one is either knocked out or put in checkmate. Combining existing sports to make a hybrid sport is probably the easiest way to create something new. And when you begin to look out for new hybrid sports, you find plenty of examples. Bossaball is volleyball with a dash of soccer and gymnastics. It's played on a soft, blow-up court that incorporates 2 small trampolines on either side of a very tall net. The trampolines enable the players to get high enough to hit or kick the ball over the net. The opponents try to jump up at the same time to block the shot. The now global sport, which started out in Spain, gets its name from bossa nova, a genre of Brazilian music that accompanies the play. We can put the attraction of these new sports down to several things. One is the thrill of discovering something little known. Another is the status of being among the first to take up a fast-growing hobby. Perhaps one of the most attractive aspects is the opportunity to shine and participate at a high level. Unlike in a more mainstream sport where a player is competing against thousands of others, Here, it is much easier to stand out from the crowd.
Tomasz Slavik is an elite mountain bike and cross-country bike rider, best known for his exploits on the World Urban Downhill Racing Circuit. Videos on YouTube of the Valparaíso Cerro Abajo, a headlong dash lasting 2.5 minutes down steps, over roofs, and along narrow, twisting alleys, have attracted thousands of views. Born in the Czech Republic, Slavik admits to having been a hyperactive kid. In an attempt to channel his energy, his mum, Dana, enrolled him in a BMX bike training group. He took to it immediately. Encouraged by his progress, Dana promised to buy him a better bike if he won at national competitions. She carried on motivating him in this way until his career took off. Now 34 years old, Tomasz feels incredibly grateful to her for helping him get where he is today. He says, "I still feel like a little kid doing crazy things, and I will always thank her for having given me the opportunity." Dana had to borrow money to fund his hobby and give up her own free time to follow him on the road to various competitions. But nobody forced her to do it, and she claims to have loved every minute of it. Since those early days, Slavik has gone on to win countless international competitions around the world. This includes winning the Valparaíso Cerro Abajo 3 times, most recently in 2023, which he did with a broken foot. It's not the first time he has won with an injury. In 2017, he took first place at Budapest, even though it meant competing with an injured knee. And in 2021, he became World 4-Cross champion, despite sustaining various bumps and bruises. As you can imagine, it's a sport where you tend to get battered about a bit. Earlier this week, one of our reporters caught up with Slavik as he was training.
1.
I heard Salma was in an accident. Is she in bad shape?
Luckily, she didn't break any bones. She was pretty shaken up, though.
2.
Is it true that Kai nearly cut his finger off?
Yes, he practically passed out when he saw what he'd done, but he's on the mend now, I think.
3.
Are you feeling under the weather?
No, I'm not ill. I'm just a bit out of sorts. Had a lot of stress lately.
4.
Hi, Sangha. Nice to see you up and about again.
Oh, thanks. Yes, that virus left me feeling really done in.
Grounded body, open heart, clear mind. Some years ago, nerve scientist Richard Davidson conducted experiments on so-called Olympic-level meditators, people from Nepal, India, and elsewhere, who devote many hours in their day to attaining a calmer state of mind. Davidson found something extraordinary about the gamma waves in their brains. While most people might experience gamma waves for just a second or so when they are focusing intently on something, like solving a problem, Davidson's tests showed that in Olympic-level meditators, gamma waves were present almost all the time. No one, except this group of meditators themselves, knows what it is like to live constantly in a state of peak concentration. The best other people can do is to describe it in abstract terms such as a transcendental or higher state of being. Nor can many people hope to emulate it. The routines of these highly practiced meditators are too different. Therefore, it's common to make, very valid, objections to the commitment involved. My work doesn't allow me the hours in the day to step back like that. Or, modern life is too hectic with too many distractions. Or, anyway, isn't a certain amount of stress a good motivator? In spite of this, there remains among psychologists a strong belief that, even at a less elevated level, meditation is good for us. Psychologist Daniel Goleman and meditation master Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche have co-authored a book, Why We Meditate, that outlines some steps for how ordinary mortals might approach meditation. Goleman begins with our attitude to relaxation. He says we often wrongly associate relaxing with switching off, dumping ourselves on the couch and watching a mindless TV program. This kind of relaxation only brings temporary relief from our daily stress. Instead, he argues, we need to cultivate the practice of being relaxed and alert at the same time. We do this by being still, breathing deeply, and noticing our body and our feelings. Noticing and accepting feelings are key to learning to love ourselves, which is the book's main message. It is by loving and being compassionate that we find a calmer, more contented life. So, when we feel stressed, needy, underappreciated, or unworthy, we need to befriend these feelings. Over time, we will then come to accept such feelings not only in ourselves, but also in others. In other words, by learning to love ourselves, we will learn empathy and how to love others. Some practitioners struggle with traditional meditation techniques, being still for long periods and breathing deeply, and advocate a more pragmatic approach. Psychologist Susie Redding says you can meditate as you go about your normal routine. The aim is still to train your brain to shut out the noise, all the busyness and worries. But, she says, you can do this just as well by being intentionally mindful throughout the day. For example, when folding your clean laundry, take a little more time with it. Take in the smells and the textures. When walking across the park, notice the movement of the trees in the wind. Smell the scents of different plants. Or take up a more meditative hobby like fishing. Most anglers will tell you it is being in nature rather than catching fish that they find restorative. A common thread runs through these approaches: to acknowledge that the body and mind are intimately connected and to savor the moment, free of judgment and of worries about the past or future. Goleman and Rinpoche have a good slogan for it. Uncoincidentally, the title of this article: Grounded Body, Open Heart, Clear Mind.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this brainstorming session on promoting health and fitness among employees. David Grant, our CEO, is very keen that we as a company take some positive action on this, not only because there's an obvious benefit in terms of productivity and days lost through sickness, but because he genuinely believes it'll make for a happier workplace. So, with that in mind, I'd like to hear any ideas you have. Who'd like to start? Yes, Sophia.
Thank you. Yeah, well, as I see it, there are probably two routes we could go down. One possibility is just to encourage people to do simple things like walking to work or not spending such long periods at their computers, that kind of thing. Or the other alternative is to spend some serious money on the problem. So something like installing a gym or a fitness center on site that people can use during their breaks or after work. Having said that, I realize there may not be a budget for that kind of thing.
Okay, thanks for that. And yes, Tariq.
Yeah, for me the key is getting people to enjoy exercise. If you offer activities that people think are fun, then I think you'll get much better participation.
Such as?
Such as team sports, soccer, basketball, that kind of thing. You could even have competitions. Another idea could be dance classes. Admittedly, a lot of people may do these things anyway in their free time, but I bet there are a lot more who want to and never find the time.
Thanks, Tariq. I think those are interesting ideas. And what about the idea of group exercises in the mornings? The kind of collective warm-up routine you used to see in companies 50 years ago. It's not a particularly original idea, I'll grant you, but it might be fun, and it would definitely build team spirit.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful there. People might think that you're trying to force them into some sort of exercise regime. You know, I know that isn't the intention, but it might look that way. I think it'd be better to give people incentives to do things on their own, Like a bike-to-work plan, where you offer to pay part of the cost of a new bicycle. I haven't thought the details through exactly, but I think that kind of individual incentive probably works much better.
Yeah, I like that. The only problem I see is that it wouldn't be so easy to monitor how much they use the bike. But I guess that's a risk you'd have to take.
1.
It's not a particularly original idea.
2.
It wouldn't be so easy to monitor.
3.
I know that isn't really the intention.
1.
I know it's not a very practical solution.
2.
It wouldn't be so simple to convince people.
3.
I'm not entirely confident about the result.
We all do it. We're working away, searching for something online, and then, in the process, come across a video that intrigues us and needs a second look. And that closer look often leads us to click on links to similar videos or forums, taking us away from the task in hand and occupying us for a good 10 minutes or more. That is the classic internet rabbit hole. I'm not talking about unsuitable content or clickbait advertising. I don't mean reading a trending news topic either. And I certainly don't mean following influencers with their wellness and beauty tips or funny clips. I'm talking about getting distracted following vloggers that share their weird and wonderful niche interests with us. Like posts about how to write properly with a fountain pen, how to make rusty old tools like new again, what are the world's top 10 scariest roller coaster rides, and so on. One hole I fell down recently was watching a guy clear storm drains on flooded roads. He searches for the blocked drain with his rake, while cars speed past, splashing him with dirty water. Then there's this really satisfying moment when he finds the drain and unblocks it, and the water is suddenly all sucked down in this big whirlpool, like water going down the bathtub drain after you pull out the plug. What a great community guy. And yeah, I know. What a way to spend part of your workday.
Breaking the habit. Some say it's an addiction, even though it is not officially recognized as such. Whatever name you give it, overuse, unhealthy dependence, a toxic relationship, the habit of constantly looking at our phones is still on the rise. In a 2023 survey, people from the US were reported to have checked their phones 144 times a day on average, and to have spent 30% longer looking at them than in the previous year. You may say that's not surprising. It is known that smartphones are the main tool for work and social communication, and also entertainment, outweighing computer use by a third. But dependency on our phones bothers us. When questioned, 60% of 18 to 34-year-olds said they use their phones too much. This concern is probably justified. It has been documented by several medical researchers that excessive smartphone use can result in depression and mood disorders. In a study by Texas University, researchers showed that even having a phone in your pocket or on a table nearby can affect your ability to do mental tasks. It also decreases your enjoyment of social interactions and gives others the impression that you are not engaged. So how do we cut back? One way is to treat the symptoms. Some people advocate screen fasts, putting your phone in another room for several hours each day. Google and Apple both offer apps to help you monitor screen time, while an app called Jomo temporarily blocks other apps for you, such as your Instagram page, and nudges you to try a different activity instead. Another solution is to place your phone in a lockable pouch when you enter school or a performance venue, and then have it handed back to you when the class or event is over. Phone pouches are effective, but they are also said to be encountering pushback from users because of the time needed to deposit and collect your phone. The other way is to deal with the underlying cause. Routinely ask yourself, What am I getting out of this screen time? And is there another activity, reading a book or exercising, that would be more wholesome and fulfilling?
1. It's an unethical practice. It needs to be regulated. 2. We're not worried about the competition. We have a lot of customers who are very loyal to our brand. 3. Our mission is to provide good food at an affordable price. We think it's a winning formula. 4. The messaging in our advertising campaign was wrong. It sounded as if we only cared about people who were winners, as if high achievers were our target market. 5. A lot of people bought into our vision of being a green company, but we lost a lot of credibility when we were given a D rating by the environmental agency.
Hello. This week, Lauren and I are discussing digital and social media marketing and the way it's changed companies' relationships with their customers. Lauren, can you explain what's happening?
Sure. Digital media marketing has opened up a range of ways in which companies can reach and, more importantly, engage with their customers directly. The use of tracking cookies and push notifications are obvious examples. That's where an advertisement or the reminder of a product you've been looking at on one site appears on another, or pops up in the form of a direct message to your phone.
That can be pretty annoying.
It can, and there are moves to regulate it. Because, as the name suggests, it's ultimately a pushy form of selling, whereas good marketing is the ability to turn your customers into long-term fans, not just one-off sales. The aim is to make people feel so involved in what you're doing that they'll want to share it with others. And that's where conversational marketing comes in.
Conversational marketing?
Yes. You start a conversation. Customers know what you're selling, but they want to understand what your wider mission or story is. Provoking a conversation on social media is a perfect way to tell that story. I'll give you an example.
Yes, please.
One of the longest-running social media campaigns is Dove Beauty Products. From surveys and conversations with their customers, they learned that women wanted to see models who were more representative of women in society, different body shapes, different ages, etc. In the hashtag #SpeakBeautiful campaign on X, formerly Twitter, women were able to celebrate their own beauty and respond to negative messaging about beauty and body image. The positivity of these messages meant they got lots of shares. Ordinary women suddenly felt they had a voice, and that was the reason for the campaign's success.
But was the campaign commercially successful for Dove?
Incredibly successful. But that's not to say conversations on social media always go the way you want them to. Gillette, the men's razor manufacturer, ran a video in 2019 criticising toxic masculinity. In other words, calling out men who exhibit bullying behaviour or who are disrespectful to women. The message to men was to be better and to stop saying things like, "Oh, boys will be boys," to defend such behaviour. But the video divided opinion. In fact, it became one of the most disliked videos on YouTube. It certainly started a conversation. All of a sudden, Gillette was getting 50 times more social media mentions. But its effect on sales was negligible.
Tackling obsolescence. Expert Q&A this week looks at the subject of obsolescence in products and asks, what are we doing to tackle it? As the pace of technological change accelerates, is obsolescence in the goods we buy, especially electronic goods, accelerating too?
If you'd asked me that a couple of years ago, I would have said yes, definitely. But there are signs that's changing now. I'll come to that in a moment. In the meantime, large amounts of supposedly obsolete but actually really valuable electronic gadgets have piled up either in landfills or in our closets at home. In 2023, we discarded a massive 60 million tons of phones, TVs, computers, and other electronic gadgets. WEEE, Waste Electronics and Electronic Equipment, is still the fastest growing category of waste by volume in the world, and astonishingly, only 17.5% of it is recycled each year. That's incredible, really, because it's high-value waste owing to its precious metals content. WEEE, it's said, currently contains 7% of the world's gold reserves.
And is that level of waste really a function of obsolescence?
Well, yes, but not just one type of obsolescence. Technological obsolescence, where a device is superseded by superior technology, has played a big part. Take smartphones. A lot of people used to have contracts whereby a perfectly usable handset was replaced every 2 years by a superior model. But there's also the psychological obsolescence factor. In other words, the new technology was just perceived as being groundbreaking and better, even if, strictly speaking, it wasn't. Companies take advantage of this. They've even been known to ruthlessly destroy old, unused stock to make way for new stock. Brand new TVs, still boxed, get sent for scrapping so that they won't compete with the latest models.
I guess we're all guilty of wanting to change something because it seems out of date or no longer desirable.
Of course. Fashion is fickle, and companies are very aware of that. And then there's planned obsolescence, when companies intentionally shorten the lifespan or durability of a product in order to bring the customer back for more. When people say they don't make them like they used to, there's more than a grain of truth in it. I'm afraid we have grown up in a throwaway culture based on cheaply made, cheaply priced goods. Planned obsolescence has a long history, especially with so-called durable products such as TVs, fridges, vacuum cleaners. In the 1920s, light bulb manufacturers met and coldly calculated that they could boost their sales by reducing the typical lifetime of a bulb from 2,500 to 1,000 hours. Even today, when such practices are illegal, certain phone manufacturers, I won't name names, have been found to have released software updates that deliberately slowed down phones and forced users to buy a newer model.
But you said that things are changing. And I've sensed a definite trend towards upcycling and repurposing more, and away from an endless cycle of buying new stuff.
Absolutely. People are very conscious that we can't continue on this wasteful trajectory. And yes, they're keeping their phones longer and increasingly turning to secondhand products. I mean, if someone else is extravagant enough to toss out something perfectly serviceable, why not take advantage and buy it up at a third of the price? There are also some excellent initiatives out there. The European Union now offers tax incentives for products based on their quality, durability, and ease of repair. Modular phones like the Fairphone have started to appear on the market. These combat planned obsolescence by enabling you to repair or upgrade individual components of your phone. And there's also the Repair Cafe movement, where the public is taught by experts and volunteer experts in training to repair all sorts of things: clothes, furniture, electrical appliances, bicycles. Hopefully, obsolescence may itself be on the way out.
Hello and welcome to the Nature Today podcast. Today we're going to look at some new evidence about glowing blue waves, which are arguably one of the most spectacular sights in nature. The tiny blue lights dotted across the water make it appear as if the sea is reflecting the light of the stars, but actually, the source of this light is small sea creatures called phytoplankton. We've known this source for some time, but the mechanics of how they produce the strange blue light has been a mystery. Until now, that is. Martin, can you tell us more?
Hello. Yes. In fact, there are thought to be a lot of sea creatures that are bioluminescent. In other words, that can light up in the dark. But the majority of these creatures tend to live in the deep ocean, where it's dark, and the ability to light yourself up is very useful, for finding food or for scaring away predators, or perhaps just for lighting your way as you move around. But the bioluminescent creatures that cause this particular effect, the phytoplankton, live near the surface. And so that's how we get this wonderful sight, on beaches and in waves, in places like the Caribbean and the Indian Ocean.
And how do they do it?
It seems that an electrical force in the phytoplankton's body causes a chemical reaction to take place, and that in turn produces a blue light. The light is usually emitted in waves, so we can probably conclude that the electricity is generated by the motion of the water.
Thank you, Martin. If you'd like to know more about this research, you can read details of the study on the OI website at
Bioluminescent. Emitted. Glowing. Martin Roddick. Phytoplankton. Predators.
In 2002, a chance encounter changed the life of music producer and engineer Mark Johnson. He was walking down the street in Santa Monica, California, when his attention was caught by the soulful voice of Roger Ridley, a local busker singing Stand By Me. Mark asked him why someone so naturally gifted was singing on the streets. Roger replied, "I'm in the joy business. I come out to be with the people." From that day, Playing for Change, the charity Johnson and partner Whitney Cronkey set up, has been on a mission to travel the world, enabling collaborations between musicians. Amateurs and professionals, solo artists or members of a band, players of electric or acoustic instruments. They post the joyful videos of these songs on their YouTube channel, where anyone can watch and sing along to the lyrics. The Stand By Me video alone has had over 200 million views. Johnson believes that music has the power to break down boundaries between people, bringing together different cultures or, say, the different worlds of buskers and studio musicians. By recording and filming musicians performing in their home environment and then editing them together, Playing for Change creates the sense of a live collective performance, even though it's recorded, and this gives their message extra force.
Setting words to music. Just start writing. Write a hook and set it to a melody. Write a poem. Write your feelings just as you'd say them. Write a draft, then get rid of the cliches and see what's left. There's no right or wrong way to write a song. For each songwriter, the process is personal and different, and the methods above taken from online advice pages are just a start. But the process itself is a fascinating one, even when the result isn't necessarily just as fascinating. Singer-songwriter Joni Mitchell described it as an exercise, trying to work my way towards clarity. Observing the methods of other songwriters can be useful, just as a sports person might watch other players to appreciate their technique. You're not trying to imitate, you're just trying to learn. David Bowie believed creativity was helped by constraints. Using a technique employed by the writer Edgar Rice Burroughs, he would write a list of words and sentences, cut them up, and then pick out different ones at random. The idea, he said, was to provoke a new set of images or a new way of looking at a subject. Elton John and Bernie Taupin have just celebrated 57 years of writing together, during which they've written over 400 songs. It's an unusual partnership in that they work separately, Taupin providing the lyrics and John putting them to music. They've worked this way for just over half a century. They talk first in a broad sense about the ideas and feelings they want to express, but no more than that. I just go to the studio and there's 24 lyrics waiting for me. And I look through them and see which one I want to start with, and then I try to write a song, says John. It's strange, but it works. Lin-Manuel Miranda, composer of the award-winning stage musical Hamilton and the Disney musical Encanto, talks to himself. I'll record just enough of the music to get a loop, and then I'll go off and talk to myself, and I'll just figure out the lyrics as I'm walking the dog or doing the dishes. I figure out what a character needs to say, and when I say it the right way, I write it down. 1.
Are you ready?
Sure. Just a minute, I'll get my coat.
2,
Oh, look, he's here. Thank goodness.
Phew, just in time.
3,
I hope you're not too disappointed about the museum being closed.
It's okay. It's just one of those things.
4,
Here, I have a little screwdriver on my penknife.
Thanks. That's just the thing.
5,
Can I help you?
No thanks. I'm just looking.
6,
Hi, Bea. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, I was just about to call you.
7,
Is she your girlfriend?
No, we're just good friends.
8,
Why do you ask if I know him?
No particular reason. I just wondered.
9,
Should I bring some food for the train?
Yes, do bring some, just in case.
10,
I couldn't believe that he lost that match.
It just goes to show no one's perfect.
1,
Some may not call it a language.
2,
Originally, silbo was not in Spanish,
3,
so something completely unrelated.
4,
This type of sound that is not informative is stressful.
Can you explain for our listeners in a few words what Silbo Gomero is?
Sure. Silbo Gomero is a whistling communication system. Some may not call it a language because they whistle in Spanish. Originally, silbo was not in Spanish, but in Guanche, the original tongue of the inhabitants of the Canary Islands. Guanche disappeared after the conquest of the islands by the Spanish, but not silbo.
And why did this whistling language develop in this particular place?
Well, that's interesting. La Gomera Island has a very complex topography. It's very steep, and it has a lot of ravines and canyons. So, in order to speak to someone across the valley who is not so far away in a straight line, actually it's much easier to just whistle. Otherwise, you would have to travel several kilometers on foot to speak with them. So, one explanation is that silbo originated as an ecological adaptation to La Gomera, like a tool for communicating more easily between inhabitants.
And one thing that fascinates me is how you got into this in the first place.
Oh, that's an interesting question. So, I'm an ecologist, and I used to work with microbial ecology, so something completely unrelated. But by the end of my PhD, I was in the rainforest in Borneo, listening to how nature sounds and is organized in the soundscape. And as a result, I started to think about how we humans fit into this orchestra of sounds. Then I had a conversation with a colleague who is a linguist, and we were wondering, is there perhaps a place where people are so connected to the landscape that their communication is embedded within this orchestra of sounds from other species? And we realized that we have silbo in La Gomera, and because it's near to my native home in Spain and not in a rainforest somewhere, it would be less complicated to research. All the pieces were there. A very old ecosystem with many birds, and then also the whistling, which was completely embedded in the landscape. So we chose La Gomera with the intention of digging further into this question from there.
I see. And in your film Ecotone, you say that our ancestors were probably much more in tune with nature's soundscape than we are today. I'm just wondering, what were the benefits of that?
So there were definitely benefits. The logic is quite simple actually. Our ancestors needed to be in tune with nature to avoid being attacked by a predator, or perhaps just so that they could understand how healthy the ecosystem was. If you compare that to modern life and how we react to noises in the city, I mean, this type of sound that is not informative is stressful. There are so many stressful sounds around us in the cities that it raises stress hormones and anxiety levels. And there's a direct relationship here. Nature sounds, ambient sounds, and ambient music as well, they actually create the opposite effect. I mean, it's more soothing, and actually, just going to the forest for a walk kind of lowers these kinds of stress hormones and lowers the rhythm.
One Love. I'm not a huge fan of biopics, especially when the subject is someone with great charisma. The thing about charisma is that it has an indefinable quality, which an actor, however skilled, will find hard to replicate. So, this is not a review of the new dramatization of Bob Marley's life, One Love. Instead, I'd like to examine why Bob Marley is such an important figure in popular culture. He was not the first to introduce reggae music to a wider audience outside the West Indies, but he remains the only global reggae superstar. In many developing countries, he is celebrated as some kind of saviour, a symbol of hope. He died in 1981 at the age of 36, his life cut tragically short by cancer, and yet, while others, musical legends in their lifetime, may no longer be remembered, few have forgotten Bob Marley. Born in a poor ghetto of Kingston, Jamaica, Marley had a passion for music and began recording at a young age, his first hit coming when he was only 18. His difficult environment instilled in him a keen sense of social justice that came to be expressed in his music. His mixed-race origins taught him what it felt like to be an outsider. His father was a white Jamaican who worked as a British Marine officer. His mother, a black Jamaican who married at 18. His father was rarely present, travelling as he did for his work, and died when Bob was only 10 years old. Did this absence have any bearing on Marley's behaviour toward his own children, of whom there were 11 in all? In the 2012 screen documentary of his life, his daughter, Cedella, talks about her difficulty in getting her father to notice her. But neither she nor any others in the family has a bad word to say about him. There is no sense that he did not care for them, simply that he was prioritising his art, because Marley's duty was first and foremost to music and its power to effect change. Shortly after his marriage to Rita Anderson in 1966, Marley became a Rastafarian, a faith that champions the right of black Africans taken into slavery in the West Indies to return one day to Africa. So, while themes of social injustice and hardship in the shanty towns of Kingston, Jamaica characterise early songs like Trenchtown Rock and I Shot the Sheriff, it is the theme of displacement that dominates later songs, such as Exodus and Redemption Song. But whether the songs deal with injustice or with dislocation, they all contain the sentiments of unity and love that run through Marley's work. The singer maintained that people want to listen to a message. I'm not a leader, but a messenger. And the messages are indeed wise and sincere, such as, the truth is, everyone is going to hurt you. You just got to find the ones worth suffering for. Some people feel the rain, others just get wet. Love the life you live. Live the life you love. The day you stop racing is the day you win the race. Better to die fighting for freedom than be a prisoner all the days of your life. Marley experienced genuine hardship and put his own life on the line for justice. In 1976, he took a great risk organising a free concert in his hometown of Kingston called Smile Jamaica, with the intention of uniting the warring political factions in Jamaica. However, while preparing for the concert, he was the victim of an assassination attempt that left him wounded. A heartfelt message and an appeal to people who are suffering are certainly key elements of Marley's enduring status. But what strikes anyone watching him on stage is the magic of his performances. The music sounds as fresh as the day it was written, and Marley himself is lost in it, living each note as he spins and jumps ecstatically around the stage. It's infectious and always leaves us wanting more, much like the man himself, a cultural legend who left us too young.
Today's castaway is a disc jockey who's been hosting his own radio show for over 30 years. Where most disc jockeys come and go with the changing of fashions in music, he has managed to maintain a loyal following of listeners over the last 35 years and to attract new ones from each new generation. Frank, what's the secret of your continuing success?
That's a good question, but it isn't something I've often thought about. I don't think it's a secret, really. I take an interest in what's happening now in the music world, and I look out for new trends. People do that in other fields, like science or art. It's just that with pop music, you're not supposed to stay trendy after you're 30. But I don't agree with that.
So you still get excited by new music. What for you makes a good record?
I honestly don't know. What makes a particular piece of music move you is something that can't really be described or identified. I'd rather not think too much about why I like a particular song or record.
And what's your first record?
This is a song by John Etheridge, a blues and jazz guitarist. I think it was the first blues record I ever heard, and it opened up a whole new world to me. I also associate it with the summer of 1976, which was a really hot summer. I was supposed to be reviewing my notes for the exams, but I spent most of my time lazing around in the park. It was too hot to work.
By John Etheridge. Your taste in music is very wide, eclectic, some would say. How did that come about?
That's difficult to say. It wasn't planned, if that's what you mean. I just keep my ears open for anything interesting, and I don't confine myself to any particular source for that. It's a question of staying curious, I suppose.
1. Next. 2. Described. 3. Eclectic. 4. 12th. 5. Chips. 6. The strangest thing. 7. A faithful transcript. 8. 3 months. 9. 60 desks. 10. Stamped and addressed.
Archaeologists say it's not what you find that matters, but what you find out. The Moai are some of the most iconic monuments in world history, but we are still not entirely sure of their purpose. Sculpted from local volcanic rock and dating back to the 14th century, around 1,000 of these imposing figures populate the landscape of Rapa Nui, also known as Easter Island. Each one consists of a head and torso and measures around 5 meters in height. So, what can we deduce about why these statues were placed here? There are few clues to tell us their purpose, but most experts presume they are memorials to ancestors, because there is evidence of human burial sites near to many of the statues. Their position, all but 7 of them face inland with their backs to the sea, indicates that they have a protective role, watching over the inhabitants of the island. The 7 statues that face out to sea are thought to be a guide to travellers approaching the island. In fact, visitors to the island from Europe in the 19th century brought exposure to new diseases and the practice of slave trading. By 1880, there were only 120 indigenous islanders left, although now that number has grown to around 2,000. The discovery on the island 150 years ago of several wooden tablets written in the pictographic language Rongorongo could have helped determine the Moai's true significance. Unfortunately, however, no one has been able to decipher the language, and so an air of mystery still surrounds them.
Dear little daughter, Of all the types of historical document, maps, interviews, legal records, photographs, newspaper clippings, perhaps the one we can engage with most are letters, owing to their personal nature. Although letters don't always represent the mainstream, or most typical, views of the time, they often provide a fascinating window on people's values and behavior. Moreover, the subject matter is generally something we can easily relate to: love, advice, gratitude, disappointment. On the right is an excerpt from a letter written by the American sociologist and civil rights campaigner W.E.B. Du Bois in October 1914. He wrote it following his daughter's departure for boarding school in England. Du Bois, who was the first African American to get a Ph.D. from Harvard University, valued education highly and was concerned because Yolande, 13 at the time, hadn't been doing well in school in the U.S. As well as having poor grades, she seemed unmotivated. So he decided to send her to a liberal private school in England, Bedales, and soon after she left, he sent her this advice.
Dear little daughter, I have waited for you to get well settled before writing. By this time, I hope some of the strangeness has worn off, that my little girl is working hard and regularly. Of course, everything is new and unusual. You miss the newness and smartness of America. Gradually, however, you are going to sense the beauty of the old world, its calm and eternity, and you will grow to love it. Don't shrink from new experiences and custom. Take the cold bath bravely. Enter into the spirit of your big bedroom. Enjoy what is, and not pine for what is not. Read some good, heavy, serious books, just for discipline. Take yourself in hand and master yourself. Make yourself do unpleasant things, so as to gain the upper hand of your soul. Above all, remember, your Father loves you and believes in you and expects you to be a wonderful woman. I shall write each week and expect a weekly letter from you. Lovingly yours, Papa.
Why are you particularly interested in the story of Martin Guerre?
Well, I belong to a group of historians who are interested in what's called microhistory. We focus on small, single events in history because we believe you can learn more about a society from intensive study of these events. The story of Martin Guerre is a very strange one, and we microhistorians look out for that kind of unusual story, hoping it will give us a better idea of what normal behaviour was during a particular period in history.
I see, that's interesting. So, can you just summarise the story?
Yes, of course. Martin Guerre was a French peasant who lived in a village called Artigat in the southwest of France. This was in the early 16th century. He was the eldest son in a family of 6, and he got married very young, in his teens in fact. At the age of 21, he and his wife, Bertrande, had a baby son, but a few years later, he was caught stealing grain from his father's grain store. Fearing a severe punishment, theft was considered the worst type of crime in those days, he fled over the border to Spain, and having spent some time doing various jobs, he eventually joined the Spanish army. In 1557, he was wounded in battle, and his leg had to be amputated.
And his family?
Yes, so in the meantime, Bertrande was left at home not knowing what had happened to her husband, and unable to remarry because no one knew if Martin was dead or alive. Then, one day, and this is where the story becomes interesting, one day, a man professing to be Martin Guerre appeared in the village to claim the family estate. Given that Martin's father had already died, the house and land now legally belonged to his eldest son.
So this wasn't the real Martin Guerre?
No, the man was an impostor called Arnaud de Tilly. Yet the incredible thing is that Bertrande and the rest of the family accepted him as the real Martin Guerre. It was only Martin's uncle, Pierre, who was in charge of administering the estate, who didn't believe him. And he took the case to court to prove that Arnaud was a fraud.
Why did Bertrande do that? She must have known it wasn't her husband.
We don't really know. Perhaps, having waited so long, she was just glad to have someone to support her again financially.
And what was the outcome of the case?
Well, Arnaud lost the first case, but he appealed and the case went to a higher court. He thought he had succeeded in persuading the judges that he was Martin Guerre, until the real Martin Guerre, complete with wooden leg, appeared in the court and told his story. For Arnaud, the game was up, and that was the end of his deception.
Diamond Shipwreck. This remarkable story would have been lost forever if a geologist working for a mining company had not made an astonishing discovery in 2008 in the beach sands of Namibia. While he was working in the area, he came across a copper ingot. The ingot was the type traded for spices in the East Indies in the 16th century. Archaeologists would later find a staggering 22 tons of these ingots beneath the sand, as well as cannons, swords, ivory, muskets, chain mail, and exquisite gold coins bearing the coat of arms of King João III of Portugal. From this evidence, historians have pieced together the following story. One bright spring day in 1533, the great ships of the Portuguese India fleet sailed grandly down the Tagus River and out into the Atlantic, flags flying. These ships were the pride of Portugal, off on a 15-month mission to bring back pepper and spices from distant places, such as Goa, Cochin, and Zanzibar, places that were all familiar ports of call to Portuguese sailors. The ships were strong and capable. 2 of them were brand new and owned by the king himself. One was the Bom Jesus, captained by Dom Francisco de Noronha, and carrying 300 crew, soldiers, and merchants. She had on board a fortune in gold and ivory to trade at a spice port on the coast of India. But 4 months after its departure from Lisbon, the fleet was struck and scattered by a huge storm. Details are sketchy because the fleet commander's report has been lost. All we know is that the clerk who received it mentioned that the Bom Jesus had disappeared in wild weather somewhere off the Cape of Good Hope. We can guess what happened next. The ship was caught in powerful winds and currents and driven helplessly northward for hundreds of miles. Somewhere near the Namib Desert, it struck rocks 150 meters from shore. The blow broke off a big chunk of the ship's stern, spilling tons of copper ingots into the sea and sending the Bom Jesus down. And the sailors? Whether any survived is a mystery, since the remains of only one body were found in the shipwreck. Archaeologist Ditter Noli says, in a storm, getting ashore would have been just about impossible. On the other hand, if the weather had calmed, the ship might have drifted ashore. And then what? This is one of the most harsh and inhospitable places on Earth. An uninhabited wasteland of sand and scrub. It was winter. Any survivors would have been wet, freezing, and exhausted. No ship was likely to pass by, since they were far away from the main trade routes. As for getting back to Portugal, they might as well have been shipwrecked on Mars. Yet, in spite of its bleak environment, this place held an extraordinary secret. It was a desert rich in high-quality diamonds. So rich, in fact, that in the 1900s, The explorer Ernst Reuning made a bet with a companion about how long it would take to fill a tin cup with gems found in the sand. The job took 10 minutes. Over many centuries, millions of diamonds had been washed down to the shore from deposits in the mountains hundreds of kilometers inland. Only the hardest gems, some weighing hundreds of carats, made it all the way to the sea. They spilled into the Atlantic at the river's mouth and were washed up the coast, carried by the same cold current that would one day sweep the Bom Jesus to its end. None of the sailors of the Bom Jesus ever returned home. They died somewhere near this mysterious coast, unaware that beneath their feet were more than 100 million carats of diamonds. They had no idea of the irony of it. They had set off on a great journey in search of riches, and now here they were, on a shore of unimaginable wealth.
I've just read a fascinating book called Fixing the Sky, about attempts by various people in history to control the weather.
What do you mean by control the weather? Like stopping the rain?
Yes, or making it rain. It describes the kind of things people have traditionally done to get the weather they want. That's to say, things like praying for sunshine or doing rain dances when there's a drought and their crops are failing. But then it goes on to describe more recent experiments with artificial weather-changing technology, and actually, it becomes quite scary.
What kind of experiments?
I'll give you an example. In the 1950s, the government conducted a secret cloud seeding experiment.
Sorry, what's that?
Cloud seeding. It means putting chemicals into clouds to make it rain. Silver iodide is one that's commonly used. But the point is that when people did these experiments, they didn't see it as interfering with nature. They seemed to have no idea that it might have unwanted consequences. So what happened, though it's not actually proven, but it's very likely, their experiment caused the terrible floods that took place that year in the southwest of England.
Hang on, let me get this straight. Are you saying that the government experimented with making rain and it caused a natural disaster?
Pretty much, yes. Though I doubt they meant to.
That's terrible. But actually, am I right in thinking that it could be quite useful technology now? You know, with climate change and all that.
Yes, and I guess that's the author's point. That we need to be looking at solutions like cloud seeding, but that we should also be aware of the history of such techniques. In other words, we shouldn't just jump into things.
1.
Fascinating.
2.
Chemicals.
3.
Straight.
4.
Doubt.
5.
Technology.
6.
No.
7.
Guess. Asthma. Castle. Chaos. Disguise. Kneel. Muscle. Plumber. Psychology. Receipt. Sandwich. Sign. Subtle.
Many big cities have large minority ethnic populations. Melbourne, Australia is said to have the third largest Greek population of any city after Athens and Thessaloniki. Los Angeles in the US is sometimes called Mexico's third biggest city. And while Melbourne retains a strong Australian identity and Los Angeles is still distinctly American, the social customs and deep-rooted values of these ethnic groups have infused both cities with a particular character, a character that their close-knit communities, Greek and Mexican, love to celebrate. In the city of Philadelphia in the US, a third of the population is African American. Compared to the ethnic Greeks and Mexicans of Melbourne and Los Angeles, a smaller proportion of these people are first or second generation immigrants. The majority are descendants of people brought to the Americas in the 18th century by European slave traders. For this long-standing community, the question has been how to rediscover its former traditions and rich heritage. With this in mind, in 1975, Lois Hernandez created the Odunde Festival in Philadelphia's oldest African-American neighborhood. Odunde, which means Happy New Year in the Nigerian language of Yoruba, is the largest festival of its kind in the country. It takes place in June every year when up to 500,000 people converge on South Street to celebrate traditional music, dance, arts and crafts, and food, of course. In an era when extended family plays less of a role in people's lives, such social gatherings based on community are vital, giving people opportunities both to enjoy themselves and learn about their culture.
Ant success story. Ants number approximately 10,000 trillion worldwide. Each individual ant weighs almost nothing, but together they weigh about the same as all of mankind. They are also ubiquitous, thriving everywhere except on icy mountain peaks and around the poles. No one knows precisely how many species there are, but it is estimated to be over 20,000. For an animal of its size, ants have been incredibly successful, and this success is largely due to the fact that, socially, they are such sophisticated creatures. In colonies that vary in size from a few hundred to tens of millions, each ant plays a clearly defined role. There is a queen or queens whose job it is to reproduce, and some fertile males who die shortly after mating with the queen. The rest are sterile females, who make up the main population of workers, nest builders and food gatherers, and soldiers, all laboring away in an organized manner. How they achieve this level of organization is even more amazing. Where we use sound and sight to communicate, ants depend primarily on pheromones, chemical signals emitted by individuals and picked up by the group. Each species produces 10 to 20 such signals, each with a different purpose. For example, a foraging ant leaves a pheromone trail that leads others straight to where the food is. And an individual ant under attack sends out an alarm pheromone to alert the colony, which then mobilizes fast as a defense unit. In the art of war, ants are probably unrivaled. They are completely fearless and will readily take on bigger predators, attacking in large groups and overwhelming their target. They are so committed to the common good of the colony that workers regularly sacrifice their own lives to help defeat the enemy. Because ants think as one, they have a collective intelligence greater than the sum of its individual parts. This is not something you can always say of people, unfortunately. And behaving in this unselfish and community-minded way, these little creatures have flourished on Earth for an incredible 140 million years.
Among all the serious business of life, the daily news, the work responsibilities, the forward planning, the everyday to-do list, we often forget to play. In fact, we seldom think of play as something necessary. It seems more like a luxury to indulge in when we have spare time. But actually, play is an essential part of our well-being and our social interactions. I'll try to explain why. When we take a break and participate in some light-hearted act of fun, we relieve feelings of tension, and we begin to relax. And no sooner have we started to relax than our minds also begin to think differently, more creatively, more experimentally, more laterally, if you like. So first of all, play is a brain stimulant. It increases our ability to solve problems and to think outside the box. Lots of tech companies like Google recognize this, providing play spaces for their workers to use at work. Secondly, play is good for our health. Not only does it relieve tension, studies have also shown that laughter, which is a natural product of play, improves blood circulation and increases the body's resistance to disease. Thirdly, play connects us. It's a way of socializing without pressure, because the focus is not the social relationship itself, but the game. In most play, I'm not talking about organized competitive sports here, there aren't high expectations on the players socially, and there's hardly any formality either. Just a shared feeling of enjoyment and of letting go. So, play has the power to break down barriers between people, to encourage empathy, and to improve communication. Lastly, and this is particularly important, it keeps us in the present moment. The present is actually the only place where we can feel real happiness. But we don't spend enough time in the present. A lot of the time, our minds wander, and we find ourselves thinking about things in the past, from which feelings of anger or regret can arise, or things in the future, from which feelings of anxiety can arise. But when we're engaged in play, we are usually so immersed in that activity that we lose ourselves in the present, which is the place where, as several psychologists have noted, true pleasure is found. But what is the nature of this play I've been talking about? Well, in many ways, it scarcely matters what kind of play it is. It could be an organized game, like soccer or a board game. It could be playing frisbee casually in the park. But equally, it could just be a playful conversation. Play doesn't have to be a specific activity. It's also a state of mind. Sharing a joke, making a play on words, pointing out something absurd. Generally just seeing the funny side of things. Among all the serious business of life, the daily news, the work responsibilities, the forward planning, the everyday to-do list, we often forget to play. In fact, we seldom think of play as something necessary. It seems more like a luxury to indulge in when we have spare time. But actually, play is an essential part of our well-being and our social interactions. I'll try to explain why. When we take a break and participate in some light-hearted act of fun, we relieve feelings of tension, and we begin to relax. And no sooner have we started to relax than our minds also begin to think differently, more creatively, more experimentally, more laterally, if you like. So first of all, play is a brain stimulant. It increases our ability to solve problems and to think outside the box. Lots of tech companies like Google recognize this, providing play spaces for their workers to use at work. Secondly, play is good for our health. Not only does it relieve tension, studies have also shown that laughter, which is a natural product of play, improves blood circulation and increases the body's resistance to disease. Thirdly, play connects us. It's a way of socializing without pressure, because the focus is not the social relationship itself, but the game. In most play, I'm not talking about organized competitive sports here, there aren't high expectations on the players socially, and there's hardly any formality either. Just a shared feeling of enjoyment and of letting go. So, play has the power to break down barriers between people, to encourage empathy, and to improve communication. Lastly, and this is particularly important, it keeps us in the present moment. The present is actually the only place where we can feel real happiness. But we don't spend enough time in the present. A lot of the time, our minds wander, and we find ourselves thinking about things in the past, from which feelings of anger or regret can arise, or things in the future, from which feelings of anxiety can arise. But when we're engaged in play, we are usually so immersed in that activity that we lose ourselves in the present, which is the place where, as several psychologists have noted, true pleasure is found. But what is the nature of this play I've been talking about? Well, in many ways, It scarcely matters what kind of play it is. It could be an organized game, like soccer or a board game. It could be playing frisbee casually in the park. But equally, it could just be a playful conversation. Play doesn't have to be a specific activity. It's also a state of mind. Sharing a joke, making a play on words, pointing out something absurd. Generally just seeing the funny side of things.
Zh, casual. Sh, pressure. Ch, nature. Z, disease. Zh, pleasure, vision. Sh, tension, social, luxury. Ch, actually, cello. Z, anxiety, arise.
The Last Hunter-Gatherers. The Hadza hunter-gatherers of Tanzania, whose tribe numbers around 1,300 people, live a life that has not changed much in 10,000 years. They have no crops, no livestock, no permanent shelters. They live in camps made of twigs covered with grass, like upside-down nests. In spite of long exposure to nearby communities who farm both crops and animals, and despite losing some 90% of their land in the past 50 years, these Hadza have maintained a nomadic, foraging lifestyle. The spread of agriculture is linked to the growth of population. First villages formed, then cities, then nations. In a relatively brief period, the hunter-gatherer lifestyle disappeared in all but a few places. Agriculture's rise, however, came at a price. Social divisions between the haves and the have-nots, the spread of disease, famines, and even war. Professor Jared Diamond of UCLA has called the adoption of agriculture the worst mistake in human history. Looking at the Hadza way of life, you can see why he came to this conclusion. They do not engage in warfare. They are too few and too spread out to be threatened by infectious disease. And they have no history of famine because their diet is more varied and adaptable than that of most of the world's citizens. The Hadza also have hardly any possessions. The things they own, a cooking pot, a water container, an axe, can be wrapped in a blanket and carried over a shoulder. They enjoy an extraordinary amount of leisure time because their work, gathering food, takes only 4 to 6 hours a day. Hadza women gather berries and baobab fruit and dig for tubers. Men collect honey and hunt. They will eat almost anything they can kill, from small birds to zebras or even giraffe. What is more, in the thousands of years they have followed this lifestyle, they have scarcely left a footprint on the land. There are no official leaders in Hadza society. No Hadza adult has authority over any other, and none accumulates personal wealth. Nor are there social obligations, no birthdays, no public holidays, no anniversaries. People sleep when they want, generally staying up late at night and dozing opportunistically during the heat of the day. The chief reason the Hadza have been able to maintain this lifestyle is that their homeland is not an inviting place. The soil is poor, fresh water is scarce, and the bugs can be intolerable. For tens of thousands of years, it seemed no one else wanted to live here. Recently, however, the pressure of a rising population has brought a flood of people into Hadza lands. The fact that the Hadza are such gentle stewards of the land has, in a way, hurt them, as the region is generally viewed by outsiders as an unused place badly in need of development. Up to now, the Hadza, who are by nature peaceful, have simply moved on rather than fight for the land. But now there is nowhere else to go, and they are being forced to share what was once their exclusive territory. There are many things to envy about the Hadza, principally what free spirits they appear to be. Free from schedules, jobs, bosses, bills, traffic, taxes, laws, social duties, and money. Free to grab food and run through the bush. But who among us could live like them? Their life is one long, insanely committed camping trip. Medical help is far away. One bad fall from a tree, one bite from a snake, and you're dead. Women give birth in the bush, and nearly half the children do not reach the age of 15. They have to cope with extreme heat and swarming tsetse flies. And yet, for all this, they live a healthy life, engaging with nature, living in the moment. Their language has no word for worry. Embracing physical activity and enjoying a diet free from processed foods. It is too late for us to go back to a Hadza lifestyle. Of greater concern is that soon it may be impossible for them to remain in it.
Conversation 1.
Hi, Rekha. Want to play a game of tennis this afternoon?
Love to, but I can't, I'm afraid.
Why? What are you doing?
Working. I need to get an essay in by tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, that's a shame. What are you writing about?
Social change in the first half of the 20th century. I'm really enjoying it.
Are you?
Yeah, I am, because the changes in that period were so huge, particularly for women. You can read it if you like when it's finished.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Conversation 2. How are you doing? Did you enjoy the movie last night? I saw you there at the movie theater. With Lisa, I think.
Oh yeah, that was us. Yes, I loved it. I thought it was a very clever plot.
It was, wasn't it? It kept you guessing. You write stories, don't you?
Well, yeah, screenplays, in fact. That's exactly the kind of thing I wish I'd written.
Do you write thrillers, then?
Yeah, I suppose so. Really, they're more like psychological dramas, about relationships. But I definitely try to give them an element of suspense.
Wow, I'm impressed. I wouldn't know where to begin.
Well, me neither sometimes. Getting started is half the battle.
You mean finding the right idea?
Yes, exactly. Thinking of one that's original can be tough.
Yeah, I bet. It must be difficult to find something that hasn't been used before.
Yes, or trying to come at a familiar situation from a new angle. Sorry, are you on your way to the cafeteria?
Yes, I am.
Can I join you?
Yes, I'd like that. One.
Really?
2.
Are you?
3.
Do you? Why's that?
4.
It was, wasn't it?
5.
No, it doesn't, does it?
6.
He hasn't, has he?
1.
Afraid not.
2.
Suppose so.
3.
Spec so.
4.
Hope so.
5.
Doubt it.
6.
Love to.
One important factor in determining a person's career success, and success in life more generally, is the extent to which they feel supported by those around them. To test this point, researchers at the University of Michigan conducted an experiment. They divided participants into 3 groups. Group 1 was asked to call to mind someone at work or outside work who they trusted and felt comfortable with. Group 2 was asked to think about someone they didn't trust, who was selfish and only out for themselves. And Group 3 was asked to think about someone who they didn't have strong feelings about either way. All the groups were then given the same thought experiment. They were asked to choose between 2 jobs, one that paid reasonably well and they were familiar with, that is, it would be easy to master, and another that was more challenging and would require learning. This second job would start at a lower level of salary, but long-term had greater potential both for earnings and for career development. The results showed that 65% of the participants in the first group, the ones who had been asked to think of someone they trusted, chose the second, more challenging job, the one with better long-term potential. But only 40% of the people in the second group, the ones who had been asked to think of someone untrustworthy, chose the more challenging job. In the third group, those participants who had thought of someone they had no strong feelings about, 50% chose the more challenging, higher potential job. The researchers concluded that if someone comes from a supportive family background or has a supportive community of friends and acquaintances, their attitude to their career opportunities may be more positive, and they may be more willing to take on challenging situations.
The general belief is that if you get good grades in school, go to college, and work hard, eventually you will succeed in your career. However, according to a survey in which 2,000 people were questioned about the factors that help you to succeed in your career, 4 out of 5 respondents said that having connections to people with status will advance your career faster than any amount of hard work or application. Almost 70% of those surveyed said that they think people use their connections to people with status to get a job, while 58% believed that others frequently used their network of connections to win promotions. When asked if they themselves had made use of such connections, however, only 20% admitted that the reason they had been appointed to their current job was due to a social connection. Among respondents, there was a clear dislike for the use of such methods to further their careers. 84% said they would prefer to get ahead by using their own talents and knowledge rather than the people they knew in influential positions. In other words, they would like to be rewarded for what they know, not who they know. While this indicates a widespread desire on the part of people to advance in their professional lives without any outside help, it also points to a resignation among job seekers that their own talents may be overlooked, that someone with the right connections will win a position that they themselves might otherwise have won in a competition decided only on merit.
What makes a good portrait photo? Composition and colour are important, but fundamentally it's the emotions it expresses or evokes that are the key. Elijah Walker, a photo editor at the New York Times, calls it emotional gravity, when a picture packs an emotional punch. It doesn't have to be a strong emotion, someone looking ecstatically happy or completely helpless. Nuanced emotions can often be more effective. A shy smile, a look of indifference, a determined expression. Each promises to tell an interesting story. Kids are great to photograph because they haven't learnt to conceal their emotions in the way that adults sometimes do. I love this one. The little boy looks so proud and pleased with himself as he carries the catch back from a fishing trip. He's obviously thrilled to be bringing a meal home. And there's another way the photo appeals, I think, because it suggests an uncomplicated life and the sense of fulfillment or contentment we get from simple pleasures.
Therapy at your fingertips. How do you feel about conversational chatbots? One such chatbot, Character AI, offers an interesting take on them. It has a range of different personas you can talk to, including current and past famous people, Elon Musk, Cleopatra, Napoleon, etc. If only that had been an option when I was studying history in school. You can even talk to fictional characters like Harry Potter. But interestingly, one character, Psychologist, has proved more popular than all the rest. It was created by New Zealand developer Sam Zaya, aka Blazeman98, and now helps over 3.5 million people a day with life's difficulties. Psychologist isn't the only therapy bot available, but it is the most popular. Initially, Zaya developed it for his own use, shaping the answers it gave to questions he asked it about problems related to anxiety and depression. It answered a practical need when he was struggling and no one was around to offer advice. If his friends had been available, he says, he would have talked to them. He never intended the bot to become widely used and was genuinely surprised by the number of positive messages he received, saying how helpful and comforting it was. He thinks if he hadn't made it in text format, it probably wouldn't be so popular. It's less daunting than picking up the phone or having a face-to-face conversation. The fact that it's free is obviously also a factor for its overwhelmingly 18 to 30 user profile. Fingers crossed it stays that way, because I'm sure we'd all rather it remained free. The ability to analyze feelings has, up to now, eluded machines. Humans are pretty good at it, even when there's a disconnect between what someone says they are feeling and the reality. But effective computing has made great advances in this field by analyzing speech and body language, and by data mining huge quantities of online opinions. However, some professionals find its popularity worrying. Psychotherapist Teresa Pluman feels the bot can only make superficial judgments about its user's mental state. She wishes there were more public mental health resources available for face-to-face support. If there were, she says, fewer young people would be attracted to therapy bots. However, she does admit it is offering some people a space to talk where before they had none.
Psychologist Daniel Kahneman found that what seemed like rational decisions were often based on irrational thought processes.
When we make a rational decision, we can trust that it's based on logical and objective reasoning, right? Wrong. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman found that what seemed like rational decisions were often based on irrational thought processes. His research, which won him the Nobel Prize in Economics, was based on asking people certain questions and is key to understanding how our emotions affect what should otherwise be logical decisions. If you look at the screen, you'll see 3 examples of the type of questions he asked. I've taken these from his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a good read, by the way, but pretty long, 512 pages. Now, I want you to answer each one, but please don't think too hard about it. Should you get them wrong, you won't be alone. Most people do, so please don't worry. So, what did you get? The answer to the first question is 53, but actually, that's not what's interesting here. Kahneman says that what's psychologically interesting is that your answer is affected by other numbers you have in your mind. So, a few moments ago, I mentioned that Kahneman's book had 512 pages. Had I said the book only had 52 pages, your answer to the Africa question would almost certainly have been lower. Now, question 2 about Linda. Of course, the answer is that neither is statistically more probable. However, the majority of people give answer B. Were the same question to be presented as a logical formula, few would make this mistake. For example, if I said, which is more likely, that x equals y or that x equals y plus 1, you'd say neither is more likely. But we are influenced by the details, preferring the human story to the hard logic. What about the last one? Well, if we look at both questions together, logically, you should choose the same option in both 3A and 3B. There's no logical reason why you'd choose certainty in one case and risk in the other. But it seems most of us take fewer risks when there's a chance of winning something, so we choose the $500 for certain. But if we're offered a chance to get out of a losing situation, Most of us would take the gamble, and we'd go for the 50% chance of losing $1,000. What Kahneman is demonstrating is that our intuition is unreliable and often irrational. The brain, he says, has two systems: System 1, where we form intuitive responses, and System 2, where more conscious, deliberate thought occurs. The problem is that, frequently, System 1 tries to help System 2 with imperfect information. So, the result can be imperfect. Were we more aware of the influence of this faulty intuition, we would make better decisions, particularly financial decisions.
1. A.
Was that a deliberate mistake?
B.
Don't deliberate for too long.
2. A.
We need to separate my books from yours.
B.
That's a separate issue.
3. A.
He couldn't articulate what he meant.
B.
He's very articulate.
4. A.
I have a duplicate copy.
B.
Let's not duplicate the work.
5. A.
That's an interesting idea. Can you elaborate?
B.
The dress has a very elaborate design.
Capturing the imagination. As a child, did you have an imaginary friend? Did you ever dress up or pretend to be a fictional character? Did you create an alternative world you could visit, or have some other kind of imaginative escape? And how much do you exercise your imagination these days? We asked 3 people whose work involves creative thinking to comment on the role of imagination in our lives. Hanif, musician. People bemoan the fact we lose our childhood sense of imagination, but it's not that we lose it, we just give it less space because the practicalities of life take over: job, place to live, money. So our imaginations get out of practice. They become less active, like any other bit of you that you don't exercise. That's sad, you know. Like society's saying, put away your toys, there are serious things to think about now. As if life's all about going after a better paid job and a bigger house and a nicer car. Come on, we all know there's more to it than that. I say indulge your imagination, exercise your creativity. One way that works for me is just spending more time with myself. That's what was going on when you were a kid and there was no one else to play with, no phone to look at. You improvised with what you had. You can still do that any time. Any of us can. Just look at things around you. Imagine them in a different context. Think about how they were before or how they might be in the future, and just see what comes into your head. Enzo, architect. I think architecture and design are great places to look for imagination, and failure of imagination too sometimes. The Hakone Open Air Museum in Japan, where kids are invited to climb on the exhibits rather than just look at them, is a great example. I recently saw a program about a new arts center in Manchester in the UK called The Factory, designed by Dutch architectural firm OMA. It's described as the ultimate versatile space in which art, theater, and music come together, a platform for a new cultural scene. The building has many references to Manchester's industrial past, but has also created some incredibly innovative spaces. For me, it encapsulated what imagination is, drawing on the past while envisaging something new to create a thing that lifts us. An interesting fact about the brain is that the same part that controls memory, the hippocampus, also plays a central role in imagination. The acts of imagining and recalling past events both come from within, not from an external reality. The final message of the program was this: if it were not imagined, it could not be made. And so imagination should not be afraid. I think that's a great lesson, and something we should all aspire to. Yara, local politician. I love what Martin Allen Morales from the children's charity The Institute of Imagination said about this. The imagination is not a nice to have. It's a necessity and an essential skill for life. Because without it, we can't see our way out of problems, large or small. You need to be able to imagine a better future for that future to have a chance of existing. It's such a fundamental thing. It's the basis for hope in an unstable world. Once we go to a place of imagining, new solutions start presenting themselves, lifting us out of the well-worn grooves of conventional wisdom and preventing us from repeating the mistakes of the past. For example, an imaginative solution to the problem of mass economic migration might be not to call it a problem in the first place, but rather an opportunity. And not to think, how can we best accommodate all these new people? But rather, how can we redress the inequalities that forced them to migrate in the first place?
Conversation 1.
Hi, Felipe. How are you?
Hi, Jenny. Yeah, I'm fine.
You don't seem that fine. Are you sure everything's okay?
Sorry, I'm just a bit frustrated. Nothing seems to be working out today. I came in early to get some work done, and I couldn't log into the system because they're doing some maintenance work. Now Fran has just said she needs me to go to a meeting that I really don't want or need to go to. It's all lost time.
Is there anything I can do?
No, don't worry. I'll get over it. Thanks, though.
Conversation 2. Hi, Ohud. How are you doing? Mind if I join you?
Hi, Louis. No, of course not.
How are you? You look a bit troubled.
No, I'm not troubled, really. I'm just a bit distracted. I'm trying to make a card for my brother. It's his 30th birthday. I can't seem to get it right.
Can I take a look?
Sure, but it's not finished yet. What do you think?
What's it supposed to be?
It's a person skateboarding in a skateboard park. That's his hobby. Oh dear, I think I'd better start again. It's not very obvious, is it?
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I genuinely couldn't make out what it was. But that's probably just me being stupid. I can see it now you say it. Perhaps it'll be clearer when you add a bit of color. Conversation 3.
Hi, Megumi. I haven't seen you for a long time. How are you? Jen said you got a new job with an American company in Tokyo.
Oh, hi, Paula. Yes, that's right. With Disney. I'm going to be in charge of merchandise for Disney book characters, like Winnie the Pooh and Alice in Wonderland and Pinocchio. I'm really excited. Why are you smiling? Did I say something funny?
Oh, sorry. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't laughing at you. I'm really happy for you. It was just the idea of being in charge of all those cartoon characters. It conjured up a funny mental image. But it sounds amazing and a lot of fun. When do you start?
1.
Annoyed.
2.
Confused.
3.
Distracted.
4.
Embarrassed.
5.
Frustrated.
6.
Offended.
7.
Preoccupied.
8.
Puzzled.
9.
Shocked.
10.
Troubled.
11.
Worried. Naked. Readied. Rugged. Sacred. Unified.
Speaker 1.
I live in Azraq, east of Amman in Jordan. Officially, the area is a desert, but not the kind of desert of sand dunes and the blue, cloudless sky that most people think of. It's flat, rocky land with sparse vegetation. Some people think it's a bleak, monotonous landscape, but for me, it's very beautiful. It is nature untouched by man. People know Azraq these days for its large refugee camp, but historically, Azraq is the site of an oasis, All around the water are tall grasses, with palm trees here and there. It attracts many birds.
Speaker 2.
We all need nature to help us unwind, right? And I think inhabitants of Seoul need it more than most. Work is so competitive, and the hours are always long. Luckily, we have Bukhansan National Park right on our doorstep. There's a beautiful hike to the top where you have amazing views back over the city. You follow a path through wooded hillsides with clear streams and gentle waterfalls. Then, at the top, you reach bare rocks and can look out over the whole park and city. It's very dramatic scenery, but also very calming after the rush and noise of the city.
Speaker 3.
People associate Wales with rich farmland and lush green valleys, but where I live in Blaenavon, it's rugged, hilly terrain. Blaenavon is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, recognised for its importance in producing coal and iron in the 19th century, which is strange in a way, because in their time these industrial sites were considered a blot on the landscape. The industry's gone now, and modern Blaenavon is nothing special, really. But what is special, at least for those of us brought up here, is that shared social history and sense of community. Those things are deeply connected to the land because it was the coal and iron that gave people their livelihood.
Explaining geoliteracy.
What is geoliteracy?
Geoliteracy is an understanding of how our world and the Earth's systems work. Basically, it's a recognition that everything we do affects everything else. It's a newish term, but not necessarily a new concept.
Why is it important?
For people who don't have this understanding, no mental map of the Earth's surface and the distribution of people across it, the world is kind of confusing. It's just a mixture of unrelated physical phenomena and more or less random human activity, political, cultural, and economic. Geoliteracy gives you the ability to use geographical knowledge to make connections between things and to understand how both changes in nature and our own actions can affect us all. The world is interconnected, and that has implications.
Can you give us an example?
I could give you dozens of examples. I'll give you 3 very different ones, just to give you an idea of the scope and importance of this. Back in the 1970s and 80s, we saw the appalling consequences of drought in the Sahel region of Africa, which killed hundreds of thousands of people and left 1 million or so dependent on food aid. In the Northern Hemisphere, we threw up our hands and asked, what can we do? But what we didn't realize at the time was that our own pollution in the North, all the stuff we were pumping into the air from factories and aerosols, had contributed to this drought by changing the climate. By cooling the air over Europe and the Atlantic, it had forced the tropical rains that usually fall in this part of Africa farther south. Another example would be an understanding of how cities are organized, with residential areas, commercial areas, and so on. If, for example, workplaces are far from homes, then that has an impact on transportation and on the quality of life in general. That kind of awareness helps to inform our life choices. And lastly, there's cultural understanding. Someone not geoliterate might be inclined to think of people living in India as just one homogeneous group. And when they met someone from India, they might make an inappropriate remark like, "Do you speak Indian?" or something, not knowing that India is actually an ethnically, culturally, geographically, and economically diverse country with over 20 officially recognized languages.
Around 5 years ago, I took a trip to Madagascar to photograph the landscape. A guy I met at a party, he was a journalist or something, had told me that it had the most wonderful scenery. Normally, I spend 6 months or so researching a place before I go there, but in this case, I only spent about a week reading about it. Not long after, feeling kind of unprepared, I threw my stuff into a bag and left for Madagascar. During the trip, I must have taken as many as 2,000 pictures, some of them a bit amateurish, but a lot of high-quality ones too. The landscape is incredibly varied. It's more or less like a different country in each region. Desert, marshes, rainforests, sandy beaches. Incredible. And all of this is home to over 200,000 different species of plants and animals.
Arrogant. Furious. Imaginary. Portrait. Various.
1.
I heard a great children's story about the beauty of nature. Would you like to hear it?
I'd love to.
It's a short parable, and it's set in an imaginary land. It concerns an artist called Zed. So this is it. Zed was a competent artist, but also very arrogant. He would tell people that he was the greatest artist in the world. Well, one day, the emperor decided he would have a new portrait of himself made, and so he asked various well-known artists from all over the land if they would come to the palace and show samples of their work. Zed went, but when the emperor's advisor saw Zed's paintings, he just laughed. "Go to the majestic river," he said. "The greatest artist in the world lives there. I'd imagine that you could learn a lot from her." Zed was furious. "I'd never have come here if I'd known I was going to be insulted in this way," he said. Nevertheless, he packed his bags and traveled to the majestic river. He asked around in various villages for the home of the great artist, but no one could help him. So, the next morning, he took a boat and went searching downriver. The boat traveled past forests, mountains, and waterfalls, but there was no sign of any artist. Then, as dusk fell, the sky and water turned a beautiful shade of blue. It was so beautiful that Zed began to cry. And at last, he understood. The greatest artist in the world is not a person, it is nature.
2.
There's a saying that whatever the problem is, it can usually be solved by walking in nature. This was something that Basho, the 17th century Japanese poet, knew very well. Basho was a celebrated poet in his own lifetime, but he wouldn't allow his fame to get in the way of a simple existence appreciating nature. So at the age of 46, he set off on a journey across the island of Honshu, a journey of some 1,100 miles. It is a journey that people still retrace parts of to this day. And as he went, he kept a journal of the things he saw. He would stop and observe nature's modest dramas, in other words, little details or events in nature that pleased him. The amazing color of a particular flower, or the way sunlight caught the spray from a waterfall and made a rainbow, or the reflection of a floating leaf in a crystal-clear stream. Then he would turn these into haikus. These were collected in a famous book, The Narrow Road to a Far Province. This is perhaps his most well-known haiku. An old silent pond, a frog jumps in the water, a soft splash is heard. The rise of the urban animal. There are now more peregrine falcons per square kilometer in New York City than anywhere else on Earth. In northern Mumbai, more than 40 leopards roam freely in Sanjay Gandhi National Park. Suburban Chicago is home to over 2,000 wild coyotes. Some have even been seen hanging around the international airport. In Berlin, wild boars forage for food in people's yards and raise families in local woods. In Los Angeles, mountain lions tiptoe invisibly past tourists in the Hollywood Hills. And walking the streets of London in the early hours of the morning, you are as likely to see an urban fox as a domestic cat prowling around. Rodents and insects, such as ants, have long been city dwellers, living in sewers or under sidewalks and feeding on our discarded food. But there is now a trend for bigger animals, many of them carnivores, taking up residence in our towns and cities. I grew up in London, says Tristan Donovan, one of many ecologists studying the phenomenon, and it didn't seem like there were that many foxes around when I was a kid. And that made me wonder, is this happening everywhere? The answer is yes. But the real question is, why? It seems the main attraction for these creatures is the abundance of food in cities. Seagulls have come inland to scavenge from landfills, and foxes have abandoned the countryside in favor of back alleys and trash cans. And where small animals have moved in, some of their predators have followed. Peregrine falcons sit high up on New York's skyscrapers and watch the pigeons below, waiting to swoop on any that venture into the open. There are other factors, too. Urban sprawl and climate change have meant that animals' native habitats are shrinking or disappearing. The mountain lions of Hollywood, who in the wild typically roam an area of around 1,000 square kilometers, are limited there to a mere 65 square kilometers. At the same time, the animals feel less wary of their human neighbors than in the past. And with good reason, because animal hunting is far less popular. But if they are less scared of us, should we be any less scared of them? Certainly not, according to wildlife ecologist Stan Gert, who says that when predators lose their instinctive fear of humans, they actually become more likely to attack us. He urges anyone who sees a large wild cat or coyote to shout or throw something in their direction. To ensure our own safety, he says, we have to establish our authority over these animals, because they are not going to go away. Fortunately, incidents of urban animals attacking residents are relatively rare, though attacks on domestic pets are common. Cohabitation with humans has caused other adaptations in animal behavior. Some have even started to take on human traits, like the coyotes in Chicago, who were spotted waiting at a traffic light before crossing the road. Bears around Lake Tahoe in the United States feed so well on discarded food all year round that they no longer need to hibernate in winter. But is this a case of animals evolving to meet the demands of a new environment, or just a case of certain animals having the right personality to suit the circumstances? Gert thinks it might be the latter. What he has observed is that animals that are naturally cautious or neophobic, afraid of new things, tend to do much better in cities than those that are bold. So, not so much a case of fortune favoring the brave, as you might expect, but fortune favoring the timid. City life is not for everyone, and some animals will never adjust to it. But for those that have, it is time that we began to view them as one of us. As Seth Magel of Chicago's Zoo puts it, we started from this narrative in which the city is an evil landscape that chews up the environment and leaves nothing behind. But the reality is that we're not going to stop urbanizing the planet. So how do we turn cities into something good, something positive for wildlife?
Do you think that people take crimes or offenses against the environment seriously enough?
It depends on what kind of thing you mean. Do you mean like chemical factories discharging waste into rivers? That sort of thing?
Well, yeah, that's clearly one aspect of it. But no, I meant more crimes against, well, maybe crime is too strong a word for it. More just the general disregard for the environment that people have.
Such as?
Such as things like littering or having a barbecue in a place where there might be a risk of fire. Or perhaps cutting down a tree in your backyard without checking whether it's protected. It strikes me that people get away with that kind of thing because there aren't strong enough penalties. It's not considered such a terrible thing.
Yeah, that's a hot topic right now, isn't it? There's been a lot in the news lately about illegal dumping and forest fires and that kind of thing. But harsher penalties? I'm a bit skeptical myself. Like, on the one hand, obviously you need to find a way to stop it. But part of me says punishing isn't the right way to go about it. It'd be better, much better really, just to educate people to look after the environment properly.
I get that, but my point is that People just don't care enough. I mean, educating people is all very well, but I think we're past that point now. A lot of people don't seem to care about the harm they're causing to nature, or to the rest of us for that matter.
So what are you suggesting should be done? Heavy fines? Or something even harsher than that?
Yeah, fines for a start. You know, just coming back to what you were saying earlier about it being in the news a lot, it's actually a really good moment. While it's on everyone's radar, the government could introduce much higher fines for littering, illegal dumping, starting fires in open land, etc., and there'd be a better chance those kinds of things would get reported, don't you think?
Yeah, I get that. But at the same time, you'd have to have harsher penalties for corporations who pollute. 'Cause otherwise, it just looks like the little guy's always being punished, while big companies get away with doing what they want.
Yeah, definitely harsher penalties for businesses. I think that's a given. Maybe even the threat of prison. Because a lot of the time they just build the fines into their budgets.
Yes, that's clearly one aspect of it. Maybe that's too strong a word for it. It strikes me that it's a hot topic right now. I'm a bit skeptical about, on the one hand, part of me says, I get that. My point is that that's all very well, but, or, for that matter, just coming back to what you were saying earlier, I think that's a given.